Oh,
Okay.
thought you were on your own.
This is Mr. B.
Good morning.
Mr. B. How you doing, sir?
How are you?
Good.
It's Paul Bartozowitz, but they
He-
call me Mr. B. So.
He's with the United Against Poverty, so he
Oh.
goes to the food.
Okay.
And you guys helped us out for our field day, with Dan donating, and we help you guys out. I'm with the Amateur Radio Club, and we help you guys out with the providing communication for your turkey trot.
Yeah. So the
Totally professional person.
are you with a group, a charitable group?
Vero Beach Amateur Radio Club.
Okay, great.
So,
Are those the guys that do the ham radios at the turkey trot?
yep.
That is very helpful.
And you guys help. I was in charge of food,
Uh-huh.
so you guys donated hot dogs and hamburger
Gotcha.
rolls and stuff like
For
that to us.
events that you guys do. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're gonna put you right here,
All right.
and you talk right into the microphone.
Okay.
Sanford, your timesheets are over there underneath.
I see them.
Okay.
I got them. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. B.
No coffee pot around, is there?
Oh, yes, there is. There's coffee in back.
Do I have
There's a
time?
Keurig.
Yeah.
Yes, you have till about 8:08. There's a Keurig back there. Help yourself. They're already into news, so, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna put this down here. So this way we have it in the studio.
Okay, right there. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll put it. I got it.
There. Good.
All right. I'm sorry.
Right there.
Shut this.
Yeah. Thank you. Only had about 3 hours of sleep. I have arthritis in this right foot, and sometimes it just bothers me. So I have to wake up.
Yeah. You a coffee drinker?
Yeah, I just had a little bit, but that's enough. Not yet. The first question I'm going to ask you is, Austin, how did this happen? I do an intro and everything, but how did you get involved in this?
Okay.
All that type of thing. You know? But the key is let's just have fun.
Yeah. I've done this a few times.
Yeah, I know. But sometimes people, they want to get the message out more than having fun.
Yeah.
The key is just if you have fun, people will listen, and
Yeah,
then
right.
the message will come.
Yeah.
You know, Barbara knows how to do that so well. She's just great. You know.
Okay, you don't need the headphones unless you're going to talk
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. Are we going to do the
I'll have
stump the Rhett?
I'll have to figure something out for later.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. We're on YouTube right now, and everything we're saying now is live.
Gotcha.
Even when We're not on the radio.
It's good to know. Thanks for telling me.
I know.
Should be a sign on the door.
I know.
I get my car washed, I save $22. How? At Suds and Shine. It's right in front of the Minuteman Press on 12.
Should I turn that down?
That's right.
No, that's fine.
It only costs $5 to
And when you talk, just like you're eating it almost, you have to that close. It's that.
$22 every time.
Otherwise, you sound like you're not sounding.
Go to Suds and Shine right in front of Minuteman Press.
You have the power to help us help others. Treasure Coast Community Health is a local healthcare provider for everyone. No one is turned down due to economic circumstances. Your generous support can help many.
I had a great idea when I'm suffering like that because I'm praying, come on, heal me. And it dawns on me, it says, perfect love cast out fear. Well, I don't have perfect love. Jesus has perfect love, so he cast out fear. So I'm thinking I can pray and get healed. No. Jesus has the faith that can heal me. It's Jesus that has the faith. I don't need the faith that can cast out the mountain. It's Jesus' faith that cast out the mountain. And if I have faith in him, he can do it. But sometimes when we want to heal, we think we can ask. No, it's through Jesus, the only way we can get it done. It just dawned on me. So I was happy for the pain.
You're happy for the pain?
Well, I
Taught you something?
Well, you get insight.
Yeah.
You always get an insight when you're suffering. Generally, you ask.
This is on Rhett Palmer Live on Facebook.
Yeah, yes.
If you're looking for a church home, we have great music. We have a great
But it's not It's not on air, the radio right now. Not
No,
live.
it's not on the radio right now. It's on air. It's on iHeartRadio too, which is worldwide, and it's on the local station too, FM and AM here, and then it's on Facebook. And we'll record it, and then it runs tomorrow again from 6 my time, 6 to 8.
Here we go. We're in the open. Stand by.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Stanford Erickson sitting in for Rhett Palmer. It's a time and day that we celebrate being an American. And there is nothing more American than encouraging and helping lift up others from poverty. Poverty, self-inflicted or imposed. With us today is Austin Hunt, born and bred here in Vero Beach, and one of the outstanding heroes in helping lift people out of poverty. Austin is founder, along with his wife, Ginny, of United Against Poverty. He also is a hands-on and hardworking CEO of United Against Poverty with major enterprises here in Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, and Orlando. Orlando's a big place. What Austin and Ginny Hunt accomplished is no small feat. Beginning with little or nothing, they now operate a multi-million-dollar help people get out of poverty with professional staff and a whole lot of folks, volunteers, and he needs volunteers. Austin, how'd you do this?
Well, first of all, Stanford, thanks for having me, and happy belated 4th of July. We were about 250 yards from the studio last night. My kids insist every year that we get right underneath of the fireworks so all the ashes and the hot coals fall right into the boat. So anyway, thanks for having me on. On behalf of United Against Poverty's board of directors and our staff and those that we serve, we appreciate the opportunity to come in and get the word out in our community. So my wife and I, my lovely wife Jenny, and I started United Against Poverty, formerly Harvest Food Outreach Center. Many people still know us as that, back in 2003. And the purpose of the organization way back when was to demonstrate in tangible ways God's love to his children. And
you have a degree in divinity too, right?
Right. I went to Asbury College, and then I went on to Asbury Theological Seminary and have a Master's of Divinity. And had the intent of coming back to Vero along those lines and starting a church. And we did end up starting a church, as well as Harvest Food and now United Against Poverty. And the church didn't grow as quickly as and we refer to United Against Poverty as UP, by the way. So if you're driving in either Fort Pierce, Orlando, or Vero, and you see a building with a big arrow on it in blue and green, it says UP with an arrow in between. That's our organization, United Against Poverty. But we started the organization originally to help people with food, and in a way that those that were unwilling to take a handout would be agreeable to. So we set up a small convenience store size grocery store in South Vero Beach on Old Dixie, and provided food to low-income households. All families have to qualify by income in order to use the program.
How do you get the food? Where does the food come from?
Right, we buy quite a bit of the food, and we get a lot of the food donated. So we run four very large, relatively large. The one in South Vero is not so large. It's the original one we opened, Stanford, still there in South Vero. It's neat to go in there and see the shelves in the ramp that we built going on 14 years ago with our own hands. And I remember vividly my kids in there, just helping stock shelves and so forth. But anyway, the food is donated. Much of the food is donated. We have some wonderful business partners, corporations like Kellogg and Tropicana and Walmart. Some of those are three of our biggest supporters, and they are so generous with their support. It makes it possible for us to provide food to families that need a hand up at about 35 cents on a dollar compared to a retail price.
Do they have to qualify for that in some way?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In order for a family to qualify, they have to be at or below a certain income level based on the number of people that are in the house, in the home. And it's kind of technical, so I won't use the jargon that we use, but for a family of one, it's roughly $20,000. For a family of four, it's roughly $40,000 annual or below that you would have to be at. And you can kind of get a gauge at how it goes up.
Yeah, and I just here in Vero, I know there are a lot of families like that, which, I mean, this is a very prosperous community, a very generous community too, but I'm surprised just how many people are below that 40,000. I mean, their waiters don't make 40,000,
Right. Well, I know some waiters that make a lot more than that, so don't put them all in the same category. But no, you're right, Stanford. Roughly 1 in 2, 44% of Indian River households are at or below this level that they would qualify.
Wow.
It's shocking. It really is shocking. So I like to remind myself when I walk into the post office or into a local grocery store that almost 1 in 2 of the people, of my neighbors that I'm brushing shoulders with in the supermarket or out on the street, are one paycheck away, one blown transmission, one illness in the family away from being in a really, really bad shape financially. I mean, it's a debilitating. I don't know if you've never been in that position before. It's a very debilitating emotion that you're going through, because you're walking on the edge of the cliff. You're walking a tightrope, and it's just going to take one gust of wind, blowing in the wrong direction when you didn't expect it, that's going to put you on your back.
No, I grew up like that, and being a journalist most of my life, you didn't make a lot of money in the beginning, and you didn't want the car to break or something like that. And I was more, had a better opportunity than most, but that's a difficult time.
Yeah. I stir those feelings up, both from my childhood, and then in the few beginning years of my marriage with my wife Jenny, I want to remember what it feels like to be scared of the, not obviously. Well, let me just say it this way, Stanford. It helps motivate me. It keeps me motivated whenever you get weary. We all work hard and we get tired, from time to time, and that's where I go to stir those that energy back up to want to get back in the ring and fight for people living in poverty, because as whenever you don't know where your resources are going to come from and how are you going to keep a roof over the head of your children and put food on the table for them, they're depending on you. Their lives, their livelihood, their future is in your hands as a parent. And any parent will tell you, as you're a parent as well, Stanford, the thought of not being able to provide a good environment and a healthy childhood and development for your children is it's a very powerful emotion. And
yeah, my parents were North Dakota and lost their farm, and like a lot of people that lost their farm, they all went to California. All the poor people went to California. And I can't remember.
That's where all the gold was, I thought.
Well, there wasn't much gold when they came. But
you're younger than I thought.
I can't remember my father ever taking a vacation for, I think, only one time, and I don't think he ever took a sick day.
Yeah.
You didn't take a sick day.
Right.
And I worked since I was 9. My brother worked since he was 9. We all chipped in. Thank God. We're in a wonderful country where you could do that.
We are in a wonderful country.
But how did it blossom then into something that transcends just the food area?
So in 2006, we expanded from Indian River and opened a second location in Fort Pierce. And in 2009, we expanded to the Orlando community. And from the beginning, the mission of and the heart behind the organization is based most simply as I can say on the greatest commandment. There's part A and part B: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so when you contemplate, we ask yourself, well, what is loving others the way that I love myself? How would I want other people to love me? And how would I want them to help me translate that love into helping me if I were in a situation like they are? And so from the beginning, we started with food, and then we started with crisis, and then we moved toward crisis intervention and started teaching budgeting. And some wonderful people have come along, throughout the years, board and staff that have helped to mold the organization into what it's become today. Today, our purpose has changed a lot. Originally, it was to help people with basic needs. Today, it's to inspire and empower those living in poverty to lift themselves to economic self-sufficiency. And that's the purpose of the organization. But it's happened through many, many different individuals, many of them volunteers that have come alongside of the organization and gotten involved and have completely shifted the focus of the organization from being a blessing to people to really being transformational.
We're going to take a short break, but we'll come into why, if Austin really knew he was going to do this from the beginning. I mean, it's amazing when you start something, then you look back and you see how you got into that, because you were thinking you're going to be a minister,
right?
And now you're transcending that to some degree in some wonderful way. This is Stanford Erickson. I'm with Austin Hunt and United Against Poverty. We'll be back.
What do New Beauty Magazine, Castle Connolly, and OMD have in common? They have all consistently named board-certified plastic surgeon Dr. Alan Durkin as one of the best doctors in America.
Mr. Hunt, question for you.
Yes.
There was some talk that you guys were going to buy the old packing company
Old
across
Scotty's
the street.
and
Is that still going through, or?
it is.
It's awful slow. I guess Annabelle was in here.
She
6
talked
months
about
back.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just when you're raising 5.5 million. It takes a couple of bucks to put together.
Yeah, but I was just wondering where
Yeah.
that. Because
We're
I had
about
heard that.
we raised enough to buy the building.
Okay.
Now we've got to raise enough to build it out. To fit it
Mr.
out.
B, do you mind interjecting and say, hey, I go there and so forth, and you're going to talk to me soon about a building, and you can talk on that, okay?
Yeah, maybe I'll say that Annabelle was here and
Yeah.
I had talked about a building
Yeah.
across. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'll do is after we get done with the break,
Yeah.
I'll open up this mic here
Yeah.
and I'll come in.
Okay.
It sounds better on these than the one
Okay.
in the studio.
Okay.
Ask
All
me
right.
on air to give me an example of some of the people that have come in and what their lives were like and what it's like.
We'll
now.
do. We'll do.
Okay,
Before
so
and after.
yeah, I'll talk that Annabelle was here in the studio about 6 months ago, and there was some talk in the community that you were going to.
Annabelle's last name,
Robertson.
Robertson. Annabelle Robertson.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get that. And then we'll go into, we need money. We have a break for just a few seconds, and we go to 8:30, then we have a news break after that. So we're back just for a few seconds.
Oh, it's a short one then.
We have talking about 5 minutes after
Okay.
this. And then we have a break, and then it starts again at 8:33. And we go to 8:47 to break, and then for the last part.
I had a dream the last few hours of my sleep that I kept trying to get here, and I was late. You ever dream about your responsibilities the next day?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What else was I gonna ask you?
Before we end, how they can donate, what your website is, how you can be reached, you can get that out.
Okay.
And repeat it a couple times.
Indian River Walk-in Clinic Miracle Mile has been a sponsor of this broadcast for over a decade. Why? I love endorsing them.
But it's live now, and then tomorrow morning it'll be again. And what I'll do is I'll get a little disc and give it to you so you can put it on the website.
Okay. Thank you. Where's Rhett?
We don't say anything on air.
Oh no.
When you're a high-profile person, you don't want anybody to know where you are or what you're doing, or you're away from home, or any of that kind of stuff. You know, that's a terrible thing about being high-profile. You know, people don't know that. You know, Rhett, he walks into a restaurant. We'll walk into a restaurant, and everybody's looking.
Okay, this is the last spot. Your short rejoin is next. Stand by.
Okay.
You are listening to the mayor of the airwaves.
So sad it's not the mayor of the airways. He'll be here very soon again. But it's Stanford Erickson. I'm sitting in for Rhett Palmer, the mayor of the airways. I have Austin Hunt. Austin Hunt is the CEO, the founder and CEO of United Against Poverty. Austin, you're talking about how you started this, but how did it transition? You also now educate people too, don't you?
Sure do. So we have a program that's called STEP, and it's workforce. It helps develop people's job skills, workplace skills, and but even more importantly, we teach people that lack the ability to have some of the soft skills that employers value so much.
But like how you dress well, or how do you say good morning, or show up in time?
Well, really it's more how you deal with conflict and how you deal with stress and whether or not you can work as a team in the workplace. There's something that we all have to greater and lesser degrees, and it's called executive function. and that executive function is an aspect of our a healthy psychology and a healthy self view. So whenever when we grow up in an adverse environment, and we don't have a healthy perspective of ourselves, then we lack the ability to have healthy emotions. And I know that sound, we the emotion word, but how we feel about ourselves determines our emotional state.
Why don't we stop right there? Mr. B just stepped in. Mr. B has a relationship with your food outlet, right, Mr. B?
Yes, I do. Also, I've seen your operation over there. I've been in the area where you do the training for individuals. Nice classroom setting, and seen Stacy. The Vero Beach Amateur Radio Club helps Up, Harvest Foods, and all the names in the community.
United Against Poverty,
yes.
Our Up Centers.
Yeah, and everybody knows about the turkey trot on Thanksgiving morning, and there's over 5,000 runners that help the community and help the Up program. And we provide communications for you guys during the run. And
very helpful.
For those just tuning in, Mr. B runs the operation here. He's professional background in doing things like that, and it's very helpful to all of us.
And right now it's on automatic pilot while I'm out here. But anyway,
the plane will not crash.
The Annabelle Robertson, I guess your executive director, has been here in the studio quite a bit talking to Rhett. And she had mentioned that, let the cat out of the bag, that there was a piece of property across the road from your current operation on US 1. That there was an old packing plant, I believe, and you guys were interested in expanding out to that. So how is that going?
It's going very well. We are a little less than halfway to our goal, and it'll probably be another year before we finish up the campaign. So it's multiple millions of dollars, and it's a very large building, and we plan to combine right now, as you know, Mr. B, the classroom, and some of our other partners are in two separate buildings, and then our grocery program is in a third building. So we're going to merge all of those services and all of those partners under one roof. So there will be, if you think of, I can paint a picture for you. If you were to walk into the food court from the movie theater entrance, that's about the size of the space that we'll be moving our operation into. And there'll be at least 10, probably closer to 15 other nonprofits there helping with our purpose and mission as an organization.
Sort of a one-stop shopping? Is that, I mean...
That is exactly, that's the most common phrase or statement that we use in order to describe what it is that we're developing.
Well, what's wonderful, I go to First Presbyterian Church, and when people come to our church, we never turn people down, especially if they need food or something, but we stop there and we say, would you please go to United Against Poverty? Because you vet the people. And there's some people that go to church just to get handouts. Nothing, some people are very desperate, but some just play the system. And our church and other churches appreciate you because you know how to deal with people and to see if these are legitimate people that need help.
Right. And I will tell you, and maybe I know we got a break here in a second, Stanford, but I'll tell you that the thing that we've learned over the years is that you cannot provide an emergency response to meet a chronic need. So people are have chronic poverty issues, and people have emergency poverty issues, and we deal with those issues in very different ways. And you have to. If you don't, then you're going to create dependency, and that is more destructive in the lives of people than it is helpful.
Yeah, we were just discussing that in the nature of America. The wonderful thing about America is you have the opportunity to grow. But we'll be back with Austin Hunt, United Against Poverty.
We'll be right back.
Somebody does it there. Okay, then we just have about a 5-minute break.
Clear.
And then another 15 minutes.
I could have stayed in the studio longer. I almost missed the news.
Okay.
Did he go from that clock to the
Yeah.
to
So I'm looking here. So. Well, that's really bright.
Steel.
No big thing. No big thing.
stay?
Yeah, no big thing. Yeah,
Hold.
I know. I know. It's
Go.
And you also have a thrift store in that same building that you do the teaching in front of it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's a lot of different uses that are we have Department of Children and Families in that space. We have AARP in another building right across the street, and I think there's two other organizations in there currently, and we have at least 10 partners that want to move in, but we don't have the space.
yeah,
So when we have the new building, we'll be able to do that.
good. So are you going to move the thrift store into the
Everything.
old? Okay.
Yeah, everything will get moved to that new building,
Okay.
and we'll sell the building that we're in now, where the thrift and the STEP program are, the classrooms, and the other building we will no longer rent.
Okay. You rent that. Okay. Well, that's cool.
It'll save us a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think what's unique about you, and I'd like to hear, is your idea of identifying the people that want to move on, and identifying the people that don't want to move on. You understand, and you believe that. I'm not putting words in your mouth. That once you identify them, and once they make that decision, you can improve their lives.
Sure.
But they have to make that decision, right?
And we can help them make that. We can
Okay.
help motivate them to get there too.
Okay. Well, go
two.
into that.
Okay.
That's yeah.
Well, there's absolutely we help the willing.
Yeah.
But sometimes people don't realize they're willing, and we help them recognize.
Good. Make that
Yeah,
distinction.
okay.
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
And then make sure that we write this down. This is
Yeah.
this is very important when it
Sure.
comes to communicating.
Yeah.
The work of an organization, whatever it is, and that is real people. How tell me some stories of real people.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. We'll do that.
people remember the lives.
I'll
of
start.
people.
I'll start there,
Okay.
and then you can zip back into what you just said.
Okay.
Okay. I'll do that. That's the next thing. Sorry, I'm about half asleep still. Only 3 hours of sleep. I couldn't believe
It's
it.
rough.
Well, no, it's the evil one's going after me. You understand? Whenever you do something useful,
Yeah.
I recognize what's happening. It's always like that. Then you know it's useful.
I so appreciate your insight into the spiritual realm. That screen shut off. I don't know if that's okay.
There we go.
It's just not something that you hear these days.
Oh yeah, no, I'm totally aware of all that. You know, like me, when you start from the not knowing God and knowing God and knowing the evil one, it makes you very aware of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And
That's an advantage.
it's an absolute advantage.
It is
Most ministries don't have it
tremendous-
because they've never been exposed to that. So it makes you aware of what's really happening. And Satan can't be everywhere like God. So he has to selectively, and his demons can't be everywhere. So that, and we're protected from him indwelling, but not oppressing. And often, you know,
Oppressing, not indwelling, you mean?
well, he can't indwell unless we ask.
Right.
But
It's an outside.
But I'm certain when you're going to give a sermon, that's the same morning that your wife and you have an argument.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And
I think of the Tom and Jerry cartoons where they set up the ball that rolls down, it falls, and
Yeah.
lights the candle on fire, and then and that's like the evil one.
yeah, absolutely.
Orchestrates,
Absolutely.
events.
Yeah. And people aren't aware of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm unconscious of it most of the time.
I can just feel it. I can just feel when I'm under attack. I can feel. I've always could do that. You know. And at first I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was, you know. But I've been doing it for so long. It just, you know, second nature. Just
Today's
like.
broadcast is sponsored in part by Touch of Class Dry Cleaners. Touch of Class
see.
Dry Cleaners. Their newest
Okay, I'll start with the
location
stories for real
your
people.
front door. Free pickup and delivery. Isn't that wonderful? Touch of Class Dry Cleaners.
No, what you're doing is so.
Wanna look like another Touch of
It's
Class?
so important to
Try Touch of
America
Class Dry Cleaners.
because I
It is
believe
the
in America.
official
What you're
dry
doing
cleaners
is
of the
an American
American
approach.
Airways.
It's unique.
You're in the open. Stand by.
You know, that's.
And now, the most trusted name in radio, Rhett Palmer, the mayor of the airwaves.
So sorry, not Rhett Palmer. He's my friend, and I miss him too. But it's Stanford Erickson. I'm here with Austin Hunt. He's the CEO of United Against Poverty. You know, we're dealing with people. Tell us some people stories in terms of how your organization helps people.
Absolutely, Stanford. One of my favorite stories, and maybe I've shared this one with you before, but I think the listeners would enjoy the story of this. Of one, you know, the story I'm going to share with you. Her name is Jane, and Jane came to us a couple of years ago after having been divorced twice, had 2 children, divorced twice, fell into drug addiction, was incarcerated, got out of jail and lost custody of her children, and she came into our center here in Vero looking for a food handout. That's, you know, that a lot of folks come to us because they think that we give away food, and we do that sometimes. So Jane came in thinking that she was going to walk out with a free bag of food, and she met with one of our staff and left with a plan that day. Left with a plan to start coming in on a daily basis, 5 days a week, and she enrolled in our STEP program after doing a lot of hard work and spending a lot of hours. She graduated, and at this point now, well, let me tell you a little bit about her background. She aged out of foster care system at 18,
Wow.
but before that, I think she had 6 or 7 brothers and sisters, and they all left home because it was an abusive environment. So she was on her own from age 15 on the street, ended up in the foster care system, aged out of foster care, and that's when she ended up going into the jail, into the penal system.
How did she walks in? How did she make that decision that you'd come every day?
Well, she enrolled in the STEP program, and that's a commitment that you have to make. We have different levels of involvement, commitment.
Mm-hmm.
The STEP program is the highest level of commitment.
And self-improvement.
It's a 6-week class, and we teach emotional intelligence, workplace skills, and job acquisition skills. So you're learning how to get a job, how to keep a job, and you're learning really about how to be a better person to other people and how to look at life in a way that maybe a lot of the individuals that come in have never seen life before. You see, as we all know, poverty is not a matter of how much money you have in your bank account. Poverty is a matter of heart and mind, and it's a sense of it's poverty of spirit and soul. That then the byproduct of that is economic poverty. So if you teach someone, as the Chinese proverb goes, teach them how to fish, and for us, that's not just teaching somebody to type fast on a computer. That's teaching someone how to see the world and see productivity and see themselves and the potential. I mean, I'm a person of faith, Stanford, I know you are, God created every human being in His image. He has put His fingerprint and His DNA in every one of us, and the potential that every human being represents is in the organization's opinion and at United Against Poverty infinite. It's without being able to be measured, and so we want to tap into people's God-given capacity and their potential and help them see that in themselves and then shoot them off to the moon.
Jane, I'm thinking of Jane. She comes there with that background. She wants food, and how did you get her to say, "Hey, you might want to come the next few days and try and turn your life around"?
Well, some people come to us. I don't know for sure if Jane was at rock bottom at that point, or if we helped her, through inspiration and motivation to kind of take that extra or make the commitment sign on the bottom line. But everyone's different. So many come in and they're at their financial wits' end, and they're ready to start living. They're ready to try anything. They're open, and you see that in drug addiction and alcohol addiction. People have to get to the bottom. Well, in the same way, people can be open to grow emotionally and personally and better themselves once they've run the course of doing it my way and being a self-absorbed fearful person. That's a lot of what's being overcome in the STEP program.
Can these people get jobs in? I mean, when you go through that?
Absolutely. So in the case of Jane, she's now working at a local nonprofit organization counseling youth. So what's so incredible about Jane's story is that she, what she went through is all now redeemed, and she's able to help other kids that are going through the same thing. So it's very powerful. But we have hundreds of folks that have come in that maybe they could get a job, Stanford. Maybe they could go get a job at Walmart or at McDonald's, an entry-level cashier job, Publix, but they couldn't get a career. And that's what we do at United Against Poverty. Is we take people from the job path to the career path and the life planning path. And that makes all the difference in the world. We were talking during the break about the American dream. And the American dream is about building on, steps in your own life and making progress in your life. And the first job that someone gets might be an entry-level position, but then we help continue to coach them for up to 2-3 years, as long as it takes. And I'll tell you something that's really exciting. Sorry to go on and on here, Stanford,
No,
but
go.
tell you something that's really exciting is, we've had many folks come in that have multiple felonies on their record, and for many, there's a general sense in society that once you have a felony on your record, let alone a misdemeanor, but once you have a felony, you can't get a good job. We have multiple felony, people that have multiple felonies on their record that have been accepted into very good jobs, high-paying jobs, career path jobs.
Well, that's probably because the local employers know what United Against Poverty is,
right,
and what they do, and they trust you, right?
That's right. And we go in and introduce that person as a candidate, and we fight for them to be able to be considered whenever otherwise their resume would probably go in the trash.
You're expanding too. You started at Vero, and it's 13 years you've been doing this?
Since 03, so going on 14.
14 years, and then you did Fort Pierce, and then now Orlando. I mean, it's
much different market than Vero Beach.
But it's amazing. What gives you the entrepreneurial skill to do that? Not many ministers could do that.
Yeah, I don't know, Stanford. I like. My wife and I were somewhere the other day. We were at Home Depot, and I bought a fan that is almost as up to my chest. and she said, "You have to do everything as big as you can make it." And so I think that there's some of that in there. It's just the way God wired me. I don't, the starfish story where you go and the kid throws a starfish in. You know the story?
No.
All right. So there's this kid walking down the beach and he's throwing starfish in the water, and this guy says, "Why are you wasting? There's millions and millions and millions of starfish on the beach." The guy says, Why are you wasting your time? You couldn't possibly make a difference." And the kid says, and he grabs the starfish and throws it in. He says, "Well, I made a difference in that one's life." I like some other people don't really appreciate that story too much, and the reason is I think that rather than sit there and throw starfish into the water, we can go into the community.
This is Stanford Erickson with Austin Hunt. We'll be right back. We'll find out where he's going to go.
All right. When you say 5, I don't know if that's seconds.
5 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 seconds.
Maybe I had 5 minutes.
No.
Because he started earlier with 1 minute. So
It's
give me 1 minute, 30 seconds,
I know,
and then
I
5
know.
seconds.
Okay. Yeah, you can't.
I don't want to stop.
You can't see this. No,
Why,
no.
why,
I know.
why don't you put it over here so I can see it?
Well, electronically, it has to be like this so he can get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got
That's the reason.
Bluetooth.
Now, let's go into now how people can give money, how they can
Okay.
get involved, your website, all that. Okay? Because we got about 7 more minutes, so let's really get into how they can follow up with you. You know, and where you're located here.
It's 2:30 in the morning. Someone is trying to break in, but your security system from Complete Electric and Alarm is working. Your home's on lockdown. Security cameras are rolling, and the authorities are already on their way. That's the security of Complete Electric and Alarm. The best security.
I was praying, been praying that someone will hear this and be useful to you. That it works. You know what I mean? Just pray for that someone hears this.
Once again, the Rhett Palmer Show will save your money.
We have so many well-to-do people that listen to this, believe it or not. It's just shocking. And they could easily give you $1 million. He has people like that. I mean, he goes and sees them all the time. They listen to him. Shocks me.
Does he raise funds for this, or does he?
He sells advertising.
Advertising.
Yeah. He owns this between 6 and 12, and it's owned by Clear Channel, but he's bought the time. And so
6 a.m. to 12 to noon.
Yeah. So
5 days a week, Monday through Friday.
6 days a week.
Oh wow, hard working.
Yeah. So it's a big expense. I mean, he has the guts, the entrepreneurial skill to do that.
Who sells his ad time?
He has people, but he does it himself, and people call in. It's amazing how many, because once the word gets out, when he'll recommend something, people call. And so then it's self-perpetuating that way. But he's a very unique, dropped out of high school, mother alcoholic. I mean, your kind of person.
Yeah. What station is he on?
It's on here. I don't know it. I'll give it to you.
Keep wondering. It's on FM?
Yeah, it's FM and AM.
Okay. Yeah. Clear Channel.
And it's owned by Clear Channel. Clear Channel owns almost all the stations in this town.
Except the ones that all the ones that I introduced you to with Karen. I think they own 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Turner Space Coast.
This is the last spot. Your rejoin is next. Stand by.
Thank you.
You are listening to the mayor of the airwaves.
Hey, it's Stanford Erickson. I'm here with Austin Hunt, CEO of United Against Poverty. You know, we've been talking how you're unique in the sense that you're trying to take people out of poverty, not just maintain them in poverty, which a lot of programs, they do a lot of good work, but they sort of maintain in the programs. This is sort of the American way. I believe in this. It's let's get people up out of poverty rather than be victims to poverty. How can people here help you? How we have people listening in Johns Island that are very well-to-do. How can these people be useful to you?
Well, you can get involved as in the traditional way we say it in the charitable world. You can give of your time, you can give of your talent, or you can give of your treasure. And we have hundreds, just in Indian River County, hundreds of volunteers. Some of them are on the board, some of them are on a committee to pull off an event like the one we had this past Saturday, the Burgers and Brews.
That was
event,
successful. I was there. That was
a
fun.
great time.
Fun time.
And so, time, volunteering your time. You're a talented person in Stanford, and you're using your talent right now to connect us to the community, stepping in and doing the show for Rhett. So, and then obviously treasure is giving of your monetary, your money. And in order to do that, you could go on to our website, www.unitedagainstpoverty.org, and there's a donate click button right on the home screen. But more than anything, just consider the value for every listener out there, the value of volunteering. We used to do a lot of tours, and I used to give those tours, and my last words to everyone that came in for a tour was, whether you volunteer here or you volunteer somewhere else, go find a place to give back, because nothing enriches our lives more than helping other people does.
Well, this is a major step in your program too, in the sense that you're going to try and build this new building that consolidate your 3 operations here. It's a multi-million-dollar operation. You've got a certain amount of money, but it would be very helpful to raise a lot of money right now.
Yeah, we've got a couple more $1 million to raise. We've raised a couple million, and we've got a couple more to raise to finish out this campaign. And it's going to mean the difference between, right now we're helping 500, here in Indian River County, over 500 families a day, 6 days a week. That's a staggering number. That's more than probably the library and the hospital put together. And that's how many families are coming into our center here in Vero Beach every single day, 6 days a week. And we're going to be able to double that. And we're going to be able to triple the space that we're teaching our job training and job placement program in. So we'll be able to help 3 times the number of students and participants in our employment program.
And we're going to offer you something. If you really give a lot of money, we'll give you the emotional training, right? I need some of that emotional training.
We'll get you the book on it, and you can come in and sit in on a class. My wife, who is much more emotionally healthy than I am, has gone through the class, and she says it's amazing, and she wants to do it again at some point. She wants all of our kids to go through it. She keeps looking at me and like raising her eyebrows, insinuating, and you too, boy.
Well, it's, we sometimes we just don't understand this emotional intelligence. We're geared to, when we have a conflict, we fight or we flight. And how do you deal with conflict and not do that? How do you deal with it and grow from it? And there are a lot of people that have made a lot of money out there that are still doing that. Yeah. So we want to bring them in and educate them as well. So if you give enough money, you can sit in on that class. I'm just
and your spouse will be grateful.
And your spouse will be grateful. My wife is listening to this, so she probably will recommend me. But this is Austin Hunt, and he's a local person, the hero, an entrepreneur, helped poverty, but not people staying in poverty, taking them out of poverty, dealing with their dignity, right? Basically, you're dealing with the dignity as God gave us dignity. Is that?
Yeah. Again, we like to say dignity first, and compassion, needs to preserve people's dignity. When we help people, we need to make sure that we are keeping their dignity intact. And there's a lot of controversy around giving these days. Some people are very opposed to giving people money on the street because it perpetuates that. I'm not here to tell anybody what's right or what's wrong. I just know that if I were in that place and there was someone that had the wherewithal to help me, I would rather them help me transform my life than give me the money from their resources. Then I'm living off of them rather than achieve being than someone helping me achieve my God-given potential. And that's what we're doing at United Against Poverty, is lifting people, helping them transform themselves, helping them to achieve their God-given potential. It's all there.
Your website is, what is it again?
www.unitedagainstpoverty.org.
Now, if someone has heard this program and they're inspired, can they go to UP and you're located where?
Right on US 1 and 27th Street. So 2746 US Highway 1 is the address.
And
so it's just a little bit north of Aviation Boulevard.
It has that big sign that says UP.
Right.
And why do you call it UP?
So the U is United, the P is Poverty, and the arrow in between is Against. So United Against Poverty. But we don't like to talk about poverty on our signs and our advertising to people that we're working with, because no one wants to be identified as being in poverty.
If they come in there and they want to get involved, they can see Annabelle Robertson, right?
And you just walk in and say, I want to help, I want to get involved, I want to volunteer, I want to write a check, and no matter what, whoever you talk to will be the right person.
You also have a thrift store there. Is that not so? And then on the other side, that's where the food pantry is.
That's where the
right?
grocery is. It's not a pantry. It's it's effectively a nonprofit grocery store.
Yeah, it's a big store.
Yeah. So those that qualify come in, and you're paying a handling fee effectively to cover the overhead of transporting and shelving that product so that it can go into the trunk of your car and we can replace it. And that's about 35 cents on a dollar compared to the retail price of something is what our average transaction, if you will.
And there's dignity in that, because you're buying the food, you're paying for the food, you select the food you want.
Right. You're not buying it, you're paying a handling fee. It's a technicality probably for most people, but you're paying the overhead to get it there. There's no profit built into it as a nonprofit organization. So you're paying all of the costs that go into getting that food back on the shelf that you take out. That's all that's there.
Now, if someone listening has a daughter or son that are sort of lost, and maybe they just came out of drugs and they're trying to find a place, they can walk in.
Send them to us. We send them to us. We have taken, so many varying degrees of dysfunction that people are dealing with, whether it's addiction or being raised in a tremendously adverse environment, and it's the environment that changes people's lives, and they have to lift it. They have to be willing, but there's a ladder at United Against Poverty that if you're willing to climb it, you can climb up as high as you want to go.
Well, all of us are some dysfunction on some level, but it's nice to have an organization here in town that doesn't see people as victims, sees people as potential parts of our society.
That's right.
Tax-paying people that will support society and support other people that have gone through what they're going. Again, this is Austin Hunt, and if people want to get involved, give some money right away on the website. The website is
www.unitedagainstpoverty.org.
And I met your wife, and Ginny Hunt was the founder of this as well. And strong lady. I assume without Ginny Hunt, Austin would not be such a successful CEO and be brave enough to start this not only here, but in Fort Pierce and in Orlando. Again, let's all help our local hero, Austin Hunt. May it touch your heart. This is Stanford Erickson for the Rhett Palmer Show. We'll be back.
Clear.
Okay. Good, thank you, Arthur.
Nice. Good time.
And I'll get you a copy of that.
Okay.
Should bring your wife in next time.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah, that'd be
All
great.
Very good show. By the way, this is rebroadcast tomorrow morning from 6 to 8, and then we go live at 8. So 6 o'clock is the 8 to 9 hour.
Okay.
So 6 to 7, it'll be rebroadcast.
What I was asking Staver, what stations?
107.9 Waxy,
Okay.
and then 1370 is the AM, but
106 point,
no, 107.9.
107.9.
Here,
Right.
Almost one. I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it possible to get a little disc or something so we can put it on the website? Just copy this?
Well,
This
I
interview?
got it. It's recording right now, so I got to edit it afterwards.
Is that possible?
It's possible.
Okay, because then he can put it on his website.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be nice, Mr.
Okay.
B. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Do
Thank
our
you.
people come in?
You got more shows?
Oh, yep.
Thank you, Austin.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi. I found that you can't do 3 hours of bringing people. You can do 2 hours of bringing people, but you can't do 3 hours.
Especially fossils. You can't do 3 hours of fossils. I did. He's complained about me too. His numbers are off. About 28% of people live there. Okay, come on in the studio and get set up. Richard, where do you want to sit? Richard is.
I'll sit wherever I'm told to sit.
Go right through that door and take a look. You sit in your regular center chair. I'm used to you there.
You're used to me there, okay.
But it's amazing, you're letting me complain, you're complaining about me.
Yeah.
And I basically believe in healthcare is a right, I'm just saying, how do you do it? You know, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it.
My point to him was not everybody can live like you can live. You know, we lucked out.
Yeah. There's water here for you.
Okay, great.
Appreciate it.
Now, when you're on the mic, just almost eat it. You just go talk very close to it, please. But it's funny. We have a letter to the editor complaining about me, a letter to the editor complaining about Alan, and then we have Paul taking credit for making corrections to newspapers, and everybody did that. No, everybody did that before Paul.
What, I didn't read.
Oh yeah, he's taking credit for corrections. You know, I one time, I'll tell it on the air, but everybody puts corrections in the newspaper. It's and I appreciate what he did, but he wasn't the originator. It's always been, there's been corrections forever. Probably in his southern newspaper it was unique, but.
Okay. All right, you guys don't need headphones unless we get a phone call.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to start with.
Well, you just about have to start with Korea, don't you?
Well, I'm going to start first on something you. I'll get into it, but I'm going to start. I'm going to have Alan speak first. I'm doing something a little different because you people are three unique people, and then we'll go into Korea. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but something a little different.
Something a little different.
Well, I thought about it, and
Well,
I
we
thought,
need a little something different, I think. That's all right.
I like that. You know, where'd you get that? Made in
Ordered it.
China, huh?
Made in the United States. I bought one for my family a couple Christmas, all the boys.
Well, when I go and travel, I say I'm Canadian.
Reduce the number of arguments.
I've done that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, these days, you know, gee.
Unless you want to get in an argument.
Yes, I remember when the Vietnam War. I'm there a little after the Vietnam War. I'm walking. I'm in Sweden, and someone heard I'm an American. She sends running after me. You're killing Vietnamese. You're terrible. Just walking down the street. So,
Yeah, the worst is probably the Dutch they're probably as bad as anybody about
yeah, Dutch and the
attacking
Danes.
Americans.
Yeah, no, I know. But Swedes are pretty good at it too.
Yeah, Norwegians are the ones you want to be with.
Oh, Norwegians are wonderful. You know, I'm Swedish, but the Swedes have Swedes have no social skills. The Norwegians, the Norwegians are spectacular. So all the Swedes go to
Also,
Norwegian
they're very-
clubs.
They're very pro-U.S.
Yeah, and they're just fun people. They're
Yeah.
just, but
They're more like Westerners.
yeah,
I
but
find.
when you go anywhere in the country, you have Norwegian clubs. You don't have Swedish clubs because Swedes are antisocial.
Growing up in the West, there was always a big controversy between Swedes and Norwegians
Oh, yeah.
because they were both loggers in Oregon. They were the people that were the loggers, and they lived in different parts of the community.
Yep.
And they didn't get along. They always
They
fought
get
in
in
bars.
competition with each other, in
They were
competition.
always in competition
Yeah.
with each other.
My father said, being Swede, when he was young, the Norwegians would beat him up. Then my father became big, and then he beat up the Norwegians. He said, I remember beating up every Norwegian that beat me up. My father, he'd push his nose, there was no cartilage in the nose.
Oh,
You
boy.
can relate to that.
Customized by Crunch.
Customized by Crunch.
I talked to, do you know Joe Detrani? Is that a familiar name? Ambassador Detrani?
No.
He was ambassador to North Korea. I mean, he was the representative. He was never in North Korea, obviously, but he was the U.S. kind of principal negotiator and representative through a couple administrations,
Wow.
through the Bush administration and second Bush, and I think Clinton as well. I think he went through a couple.
He's local here?
No. I was talking to him over the weekend though, and because I gave him a call. He's an old friend, and I said, "What the hell is going on?
Oh, go
Yeah, that'd
bring
be a
that
good
up.
question.
What
yeah.
are you doing?"
No, bring that up. That's
It's
good.
kind of interesting, you know. He's,
Well, Pyongyang-
he's not involved in it directly anymore, but
Pyongyang is used to be called the city of churches because that's where all the Presbyterian churches were in Pyongyang. Because the Presbyterian minister who was a doctor saved the emperor in Korea, and so he wanted, as a reward, to take care of have a church. And he says, okay, you can have a church, but up north, where all the criminals are. I wouldn't live down south. So the Presbyterians were in Pyongyang. So all these people are probably used to be Presbyterians. That's what happens to Presbyterians.
what
What
happened?
happened to the church?
Yeah, I don't know what happened
Well,
to church.
I'm sure it's not a church
No,
anymore.
probably not. No.
is on 43rd.
Stand by. Open is next.
Okay.
4714. Again, 569 4714.
Now, the most trusted name in radio, Rhett Palmer, the mayor of the airwaves.
Hey, this is Stanford Erickson sitting in for Rhett Palmer. It's a beautiful day here, and it's a time and a day to remember America, what it stands for, and those who have contributed to this unique nation among nations. With us today are three heroes. They would never call themselves that, but they just did their job from their point of view. But all three put their lives on the line so you and I could live a day longer in America. We have Richard Kerr, who has been on this program many times. He's the former Deputy Director of the CIA. Also with us is Rear Admiral James Hart, a Navy aviation officer, flight commander, who served 38 years in active duty. We also have Alan Madison, who served 9 years in the U.S. Navy on multiple nuclear fast attack submarines, and then took his nuclear expertise to implement security programs for our nation's nuclear power plants, working for the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Let's start with Alan today. You were on a submarine during the so-called Cold War, but that didn't mean you didn't experience danger and potential loss of life, right? I mean, people don't remember this.
Oh, well, exactly. The Cold War and the submarine service under the water was not so cold. We were trying to gather intelligence on what their Navy was doing, and so in a few cases we would run into each other, not dramatic, not actually physically run into each other, but there have been instances of contact, warlike contact between nuclear submarines, so U.S. nuclear submarines and Russian.
What did they follow you and you follow them, or?
In a couple cases we had, and I'm not going to name the ship or the days or anything like that, but the opportunity to gather intel on some Russian naval exercises and their ships. We were always trying to find out more information about what type of armaments they had, what type of capabilities their Navy had. And so we would be in locations where we didn't want them to know we were there. And when they found we were there, in some cases...
How do you do that? Do you just turn down all the engines? Or?
No, the United States Navy submarine program is always focused on stealth. So they're looking at being a very quiet submarine. The design of the screw, the design of the hull of the ship has always been designed so that we can operate quietly. The Russian Navy worked on, their idea was speed, so their ships were very fast, much faster than we were. But they also worked on survivability of their crews, so they're more compartmentalized in the submarines. We would be very quiet.
Survival of the crews. You didn't work on survival of the crews?
The Navy ships are not as compartmentalized as the Russian ships were.
So if something happens, it can be over, right?
Yes. Yeah, I guess that's the idea.
Do you have any experience like that?
We had multiple experiences. For example, we were caught in a harbor, a Russian harbor, monitoring the exercises that were going on.
Probably for Richard Kerr,
Possibly.
You're probably working for Richard Kerr at that. You didn't know that, but I mean...
The Russians fired a dummy torpedo towards us, not knowing we were there. The captain ordered back emergency. Now they know we're there. And from that point on, they tried to force us to surface. And by forcing us to surface, they utilized depth charges. Not to try to kill us, but to force us to surface. But it's still pretty frightening when you're down there and you're hearing the clicks and the explosions going off very close. So we ran for a while, tried to get below thermal layers so that we could hide out again. And off and on it worked, but it took quite a long, it seemed like days, it seemed like weeks actually, before we actually got to an area where they stopped trying to force us to surface. That's one experience. There's another submarine. I was not serving on it at the time, but got in a similar situation and actually ended up with that dummy torpedo through their tubes, their sail, and brought it in under cover of night thinking they were hiding it. Of course, it turned out in the San Diego paper the next morning. They couldn't really hide a torpedo in the sail of a submarine. So yeah, it wasn't very cold for submarine service.
Mm-hmm. Let's now go to this other hero. He doesn't consider himself that, I know, but Rear Admiral James Hart. We have young people now, because we have wars now, but young people now that you are on carriers that are it's called a controlled crash, that are taking off and landing and are flying and in combat, right? I mean, you've experienced that. How do you teach young people to deal with that and not emotionally just fall apart, or maybe they do later on?
Well, if you're talking specifically about pilots and people like that are flying, it comes along with your training. You work your way through a lot of phases and stages in training. It prepares you for those days and those times. I mean, recently we've had an F-18, Navy F-18 shoot down a Syrian airplane, for example, and that was all based on convinced solid training, rules of engagement. He knew exactly what he was supposed to do or not do, and the Su-22 violated some set of rules of engagement, which caused him to take that action that he took. So it comes with the territory, comes with your job, but it's also something you grow into, you learn how to deal with.
Why did you go into aviation? What was your motivation? Was the thrill of it, the commitment? What was?
I always loved flying. I learned to fly when I was about 16 or 17 years of age, in small airplanes, and I thought I was wanted to be an airline pilot, and I was following and pursuing that particular vein of a career when I ran into a Navy recruiter, and I started talking to him, and I found out that there were programs in the Navy, and I liked the idea of being on an aircraft carrier and seeing what that was about. It was also a good way to transition to another career a little bit later if you wanted to. But I didn't. I ended up staying in the service, and I was actually in the Navy for 33 years. You gave me a few more. You gave me a few extra years. I was in government service for that time, but 33 years in the Navy, and enjoyed the flying.
In terms of what's happening today, our service, our Navy has decreased enormously. Is that true? Are we?
Yeah, we're at one of the lowest points in numbers of ships that we've had in the last 30, 40 years. We are today around 275 ships, and the Chief of Naval Operations, the head admiral in the Navy, thinks, and the studies show, we should be around 350 ships.
Now we have Richard Kerr, the former deputy director of the CIA. What motivated you to go into the CIA? And a lot of people don't know that, but often you're putting your life on the line, because people, when you're there, they know you're there, and you don't know what they're going to do with you at times, right?
Well, what motivated was pretty straightforward. I needed a job. I was in graduate school. I had 3 children. I'd been in the Army, gotten married very early, and been in the Army, and come out, and then went to university. And I had kind of run the course. I needed to make a living for a family. So a CIA recruiter came, and I thought, my original intent was to teach.
Well, you're 6'3"? So he's looking at you, you're 6'3", right?
Right.
That's probably one of the reasons he was going to recruit you.
I don't know, 6'3" and skinny. I'm not skinny anymore, I'll tell you. But, and beside, I was going to teach. I had an offer for a small college in California as an assistant professor. And then the agency came, CIA, and, I didn't have the slightest idea
we'll be
what
right
CIA
back
was about.
with these heroes. I'll continue with you. And some of the, not just you, but how people put their lives on the line in the agency.
Sure.
Because and people forget that. They're putting their lives on the line. I met so many, especially the Russian KBG, were always nice to journalists, always wanted to meet us. So I met a lot of those. And I just could not understand, because these were intelligent people. They didn't get here without being genius.
They were
IQ.
usually the brightest. That's right.
These were the brightest. These genius IQ. They looked like Neanderthals, but they were these brilliant people. And I'd always ask them, and they loved their country. I mean, they really loved their country. And I'm thinking, they can love their country, but not for me to judge, because under the Tsar, probably life wasn't too good.
Do you remember Wolf, the head of, you remember that name?
No.
Head of East German intelligence?
Oh, yes.
I talked to him one time, several times.
Let's bring that up. Let's stay with that. Yeah, no, he was very...
But he had that view I was... You guys are just like me. We were with the group intelligence. I was doing things for my country.
I know. I remember being interviewed saying that. Killing people too. Yeah.
Well, there is a difference, and I had a little confrontation with him on that. Yeah, we weren't the same.
Yeah, he was very vicious. He was well known for being vicious.
Trying to think of his first name, I can't even think of it right
But the questions that James put up, we can go into Korea. What's happening in Korea?
Korea is fascinating, I think, right
Yeah,
now.
and you talk to the person, so why don't we do that? But then you have submarines out there now too.
Yeah.
You know, you can talk to that, and we have carriers out there. I'm sorry, I just wanted, you know, it's the 4th of July, and basically you don't think of yourself as that way, but we wouldn't have America without you. You know, I mean, people have to understand that. And they're not taught that in the schools anymore. They're just not taught in the schools that, you know, that's the sad thing.
Well, when you're in the military, you sacrifice quite a bit.
Oh,
I mean, it's family and, you know, you're away from home.
Yeah.
I was always struck by it. Now, I didn't, you know, I usually made it home at night, or at least after a couple months or 3 or 4 months. I never was longer than, say, 3 or 4 months on a TDY. But I usually came home at night to a family. That's a little different than people who go off on deployments for how long? 6 months?
6 months.
Yeah.
13.
13 for the, yeah.
The longest cruise I was ever on. Yeah.
That's a long time.
13. I was
That's a year of your life.
1 year, 9 months, 8 days, and it took me 2 years to get over it.
The advantage is when you come back home, you can fill up a C-van and bring it home because there's no duty on any of that stuff when you come back.
Right.
Yeah, but that's tough.
Yeah, it's
We've
not
done-
good for a family.
We've gone to deployments that are year long across all the services.
Yeah.
That's
You
too
know,
long.
the Army guys go, you know, before 9/11, they didn't do that.
Yeah,
Tried
right
not
now.
to,
it's-
yeah.
Five deployments.
This is the last spot. Short rejoin is next. Stand by.
Yeah, you had the feeling they're wearing out.
Yeah, my son's still in, and he was in the original Desert Storm, and he was away. I think he made like 5 or 6 deployments.
Yeah, talk on that a little bit if you
Yeah,
want to.
my
What,
son-in-law,
Army?
In terms of
Army.
the Army. Yeah, talk to that a little bit.
My son-in-law made 3 deployments in the short time he was in.
Hey, it's Stanford Erickson. We're here celebrating America, and we have 3 what I call heroes. They don't call themselves heroes, but heroes who sacrificed a lot for our country. We're talking to Richard Kerr, and Richard Kerr, there's so many people out there that, and the CIA is not a very big organization, and they're not self-protected to some degree. Is that so?
No, that's fair. At one time I mentioned this earlier on a program, General Schwarzkopf was complaining that we didn't give very good support to tactical intelligence during the first Gulf War. And I told him, I said, you know, we have fewer people over total overseas than you have on one carrier.
Mm.
This is not a big organization, and it doesn't do tactical intelligence. It does primarily strategic intelligence. So you have huge organizations of DIA, and each service has an organization. They provide your tactical intelligence, and trying to change that actually has had a serious effect on CIA. CIA reacted by getting more and more involved in tactical intelligence, and I think in doing that it lost some of its major abilities in strategic intelligence. Right now, Korea is a good example of a strategic intelligence problem, not a tactical. It could turn into a tactical problem, but it's a strategic problem right now.
How would the CIA and your background? What would you advise the president during something like this? What would they?
You know, we used to have what were called deputy committee meetings, where the deputies of the principal organizations, including vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and deputy in state, the deputy and somebody out of defense, usually somebody in the not in the primary, not the deputy secretary of defense. They would meet and discuss this issue. I would get as an intelligence officer, the head of intelligence, I would get about 10 minutes to say, here's the intelligence setting. Here's the information we have. Here's what we know. And equally important, here's what we don't know. And the vice chairman, Dave Jeremiah, at that point in time when I was there, would say, you know, here's where we are in terms of military, where forces are, what our capacities are. Here's what we could do. Here's what we can't. And then we'd go through options about what are the things you could do. And Korea would be a good example. My own sense, and I'm not in a deputies committee right now, and I haven't been in one, so I don't know the specifics. But it seems to me that the North Koreans are, in fact, provoking the United States to react. That the missile launch on yesterday was a provocation, and they're not stupid. I mean, I would give the head of North Korea some. I know people think he's kind of a fool and a young guy without any brains.
Now he's been groomed by this.
I wouldn't make that assumption. I'd make an assumption that he has a pretty good sense of President Trump too. He is provoking him to do something. The question would be, what's he trying to do? Is he trying to get us to militarily react? And what were the implications of a military action on the part of the United States if we went in, for instance, and took out some missile facilities or some limited strike, but a fairly significant one? China would react. Probably the world would react negatively. I don't know. You have a better idea than I do of South Korea, but South Korea would shake in its boots because they would be afraid of what was about to happen. So he may want to provoke something like that.
Don't you think he might want to be doing it because so far he's strained relations with China because of his current actions? But if he gets the United States to come after him, China's got to come to his defense.
But there was a meeting,
and so he'll get the support that he's been lacking from China.
There was a meeting between the Chinese and the Russians yesterday.
Yeah.
So at least he provoked that.
Yeah.
Admiral, what do you think? Does that sound correct?
I'm not exactly sure what North Korea wants. Do they want to try to force the United States off of the Korean Peninsula so they can carry on what they started, 50 years ago, try to take over the South? Is that what they're after? Is it just to have nuclear weapons and be part of that group of countries that have that? I mean, they're very close now. They're not quite there yet, but they're very close, as this last test just shown. So I think the current administration is going to have to make some tough decisions about what to do. And there's probably still some things that can be done diplomatically, more of a comprehensive strategy to figure out how to get at this problem. There's still a lot of trade and stuff happening between North Korea and China. I mean, the Chinese businessmen are making a lot of money off of North Korea, and they don't want to see that stop. And there's a lot of stuff moving from China to North Korea that's what they call dual use. You could say it's for this, but it could be used for in the nuclear industry as well. So these are things that we're going to have to grapple with and figure out.
Well, I was surprised that you're saying that the North Koreans did the hacking, but they don't have in North Korea the facilities to do the hacking, so they're really in China.
Oh, they can hack from.
But they said that the people that are hacking are right in China because it has better facilities to hack.
Yeah, but they could hack from North Korea. I mean, it doesn't take significant facility. I was struck by the trade in the first quarter of this year. Apparently was up, according to the Wall Street Journal, 37% between China and North Korea. At a very time when you thought it was going down. But it's up 37%. That's a significant amount. So the Chinese still have not weaned themselves away from, and nor will they, I think, without a great deal of pressure. There's a lot of things we could do to the North Koreans if we chose, in terms of banking, kind of cutting off connections, denying banking status to Chinese banks. We could begin putting pressure on specific individuals and companies in China that we're trading. I mean, there's a lot of things that we still have not done.
Why are they, in terms of President Trump, he has, 2 carriers there now, all these submarines, Alan? Why is he reacting that way rather than doing what you're saying in terms of a more...
I think he's trying to do that. They're trying to put the screws to them.
Yeah,
but it takes a while.
But he's provoking them as well. I mean,
Yep.
President Trump is provoking me, isn't he? I mean,
I don't know to comment on that. I don't know why. I'm hearing what's being said. I don't have that much knowledge about what's going on in Korea, to be honest.
okay, we're over. Sorry, I didn't see this. I got so into
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure I can comment on. I've got an opinion about what Korea probably wants is they want more support.
Okay.
They want something
Well, that's
from the
news,
United
so they're
States.
going to cut you off.
Yeah,
So-
yeah,
Okay, we have the open,
yeah.
and then I'm immediately going to play Stump the Rat.
Okay.
You guys will need your headphones on.
Okay. I cleaned the headphones with
And
Thank
I'll
you.
just turn them up a little bit. Right now, there's nothing on because you can't hear the news.
Okay, we're going to stump the rat, and then we'll go back
And then
to.
Stump the Rat, hold on. And so I'm going to ask the question,
Yeah.
and I'm going to play the Jeopardy theme.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'll ask for an answer. And I'll give you, I have a hint for this, so you guys will get it. But then part 2 will be for the audience
Okay.
to call in. Okay?
Okay.
And then you can take your headphones off, and when you take them off, put them down just like this so they're down
Flat.
flat.
Like this.
And I'll shut off the headphones so there's no squeal.
Okay.
Okay?
After that, then let's just on Korea just a little bit more in terms of the military buildup. What's there, and I think the reason if you think this is something.
I'm not sure I'm
with Trump-
qualified to comment on some
Okay.
of this.
Nobody's qualified,
No, I just,
Okay. But I think you
including
think
the
it's
people
you think
who are in
you
charge.
think I
I feel for the guys that are sitting off the shore of Korea right now because they don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, bring that up. But I think what you're thinking is that perhaps because Mr. Trump has not had a lot of experience in dealing with this.
Scares the shit out of me.
Well, you can say that, yeah, because he's not had a lot of experience with this. That you don't know what he's going to do or why he's doing it, and they don't know what he's doing or why he's going to do it.
I have a lot more confidence in him than I would in Obama.
Yes, I do too. I do too. For that one, doesn't.
I know, but I mean, in terms of the people around him,
Yeah, but that it's nothing. It's no problem to say that. You know, that's why you're here, the token liberal. Come on. He's sort of liberal too, but that's
I
okay.
had a lot more confidence in the people that Obama had serving him. I'm not sure yet.
Susan Rice.
I've worked with a lot of them.
He's worked with a lot of those. Less confidence. My niece, my wife's niece, worked for Susan Rice. She should say that on air.
yeah, you got to watch your.
I know. It's,
You're on television too, so.
yeah.
Oh boy, yeah, Tiffany.
Today's broadcast is being brought to you in part by Center for Advanced Eye Care. 5 doctors that genuinely care about your eye care. Dr. Mallon, Dr. Katz, Dr. Schnell, Dr. Kennedy, Dr. Brannigan, Center for Advanced Eye Care. US 1, Vero Beach, south of 37. This message could save your life. Your headlights, are they foggy?
Yeah, put them away.
Oh, you can get them done.
Can you
by
adjust?
Dick
Can you
Harry.
adjust the
Yeah,
volume?
I'd put them right
But
down
I'll
here.
tell you what, I trust the professionals to get it done
I don't put it on the ear. I put it here.
Yeah.
Restoration. 696-2820. It could mean the difference between life and death. Get your headlights fixed. Get it fixed now. Go where the air goes. That's to Al's Auto Restoration. 696-2820. 696-2820.
Yeah. After Alan makes his comments on this, I'll let the audience know where he lives and what his phone number is.
Oh, good. I get to move again.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Of course. I'll get next hour the honor flight.
hear you,
I'll get
so
the
loud.
I'll get the honor flight on the next
All right,
hour.
that's good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so you can do that. He's taking World War II people on the honor flight. Which is,
Oh, neat.
Really
Very
loud.
cool.
yeah. He takes World War II people on the honor flight.
Yeah.
And Korean veterans
Some Vietnam guys too.
in Vietnam. Hey, it's Stanford Erickson. I'm here with.
It is time for
Oh,
Stump the Rhett. All right, gentlemen, and really it's time for Stump the Fossils.
yeah, fossil fossils.
As Rhett is on assignment and he'll be back shortly. But since we've got all of these well-known people in the studio today, Wednesday, July 5th, on this date, French designer Louis Reard unveiled what?
Statue of Liberty.
Go.
I've got it. I've got it.
Okay, we have one person who's got it. Richard Kerr.
How about the Statue of Liberty?
I agree.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hint.
Uh-oh.
Brian Hyland sang about it. He called it Itsy Bitsy.
Itsy bitsy.
Teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini.
Oh, bikini!
Yeah.
Oh! Well, I knew Alan would get that. Alan has spent a lot of time looking at those things, right?
Yeah.
He was in California.
Guilty.
In the United States in the 60s, so it took about 14 years to come from French to us. That was a pretty good answer about the Statue of Liberty. But anyway, part two for our listeners, and this is for a $25 gift certificate to CJ Cannons.
Oh, good food, good food.
3500 778 3500. If you know that the bikini was unveiled July 5th, what year? 778 3500. Back to you, Stanford. Take it away.
Okay, please call it in, and you'll get your award, and we'll listen to you a little bit on the radio, too. Richard, you had a question for Mr. B?
I do. You know, he's talking about ham radio. I didn't even realize there were ham radio operators anymore. You can pick up the
Yeah.
phone and call somebody. Why would you go by ham radio?
That's a good question. And that's asked all the time. So when we have a hurricane, and we have all the ham radio operators at these shelters, for Hurricane Nancy, we had 12 shelters open. We had 12 individuals that were manning the shelters. And the cell phone tower goes down, who do you talk to now?
Good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, ham radio is still in effect. We have 2-meter operations. We have repeaters here in Union County. And in fact, last night we had an Aries net run every Tuesday night. And that's to keep hone our skills, so to speak. And we just completed our National Field Day over at Delmar Condominiums. And that's when all ham radio operators and clubs from around the country try to make as many contacts as they can, and we have some fun doing that. So ham radio, yes, is alive and well, and the saying now, it's not your grandfather's radio anymore.
Hey, let's go back to Richard Kerr, and you have the these flat. I don't know why it's not going flat. Richard, in terms of, a lot of people don't know, but there are not many CIA officials in the world, and they're not protected all that well. Is that right?
No, quite often you're pretty much out on your own, depending. Some are obviously part of the official establishment, the embassies, but some are not, and are essentially out there on their own, using their own wits and their own, and hopefully some very good cover to protect them. But they are fairly vulnerable, and this is, as you've seen in some countries, they are. We've lost a number of case officers overseas, killed by terrorism. People have been identified, and I think we lost a major station chief in Greece a few years ago, and we unfortunately regularly lose people, and they're behind the wire in some places, like in Afghanistan. They're with the military, but also, if you're really going to function, you need to be outside with people that you're trying to collect information on and working with. So you don't have somebody walking alongside you with a gun.
You know, I was at Langley, and you see the stars.
That's right,
on
the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people are on the?
I don't know what the number is. It's unfortunately over the past several years, a number of people have been killed, primarily in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And it's so sad. I mean, we give Medal of Honor awards to people, and we promote it, and these people die, and usually no one knows about it.
Yeah, that's right. It's not something that's advertised. Families obviously are supported, and we have a very good organization now that actually follows the military's lead in supporting people that are dependents and families, and we have a good education program for people who've lost their major support for people to go to college. It's a kind of new organization for over the past kind of 15 years. Before that, we really didn't have much. People were kind of left on their own.
Admiral Hart, since 9/11, has the military sort of changed? That was a major change in our approach, right?
Right. The operational tempo of the entire military has really, really changed. People now deploy for a year at a time to Afghanistan, Iraq, East Africa, places like that. Before 9/11, you know, in the Navy on aircraft carriers, standard deployment would be 6 months, followed by about 3 months at home, and then 3 months of in and out of ports working up, for example. Army units would rotate from Germany to wherever they had to go and come back after their exercise was over. But after 9/11, we went with these two wars that we've gotten into. People are gone for long periods of time, and they're gone. Sometimes I'll talk to special operators, Army officers, people like that. 5, 6 deployments in the last 7 years. I mean, it's just amazing. Now those are shorter; those are probably 3 to 6 month deployments, but still, that's a lot of time away from home. That's a great sacrifice that they all make for this country.
Alan was on nuclear submarines. How long were you deployed sometimes?
My longest cruise was 13 months, but the Admiral's correct. Most of the Navy submarines didn't go off for longer than 6, 7 months. The boomers, what we call the boomers, the missile boats, were on a 6-month rotation. They had 2 crews, blue and gold crew, and they'd go out for 4 or 5 month operation to take a 6-month time period. Obviously, 30 days for prep, and then 30 days for debrief when they got back. So it's still only a 6 month, but for example, my son right now is currently in the Army. He was 82nd Airborne.
Ooh, jumping out of planes.
Yeah, during the first Desert Storm, and he's probably 5 or 6 deployments in his career. My son-in-law, who was in the Army, he was on 101st Airborne, and he made at least 3 deployments, and then 1 3-month tour in Korea before he got out in his short term.
You know, in terms of just the psychology of the emotional. Yeah, I was in the Army, short period of time, Stars and Stripes, and I interviewed a lot of very brave people, and I would ask them. These are Medal of Honor winners, Silver Star, and I'd say, "What motivated you to do that?" And they said, "I saw someone's head knocked off by a grenade, and I just got angry, and I just did what I did." And I'm thinking that the anger and the fear and it's difficult to live with that. I mean, live with it after. Alan, after your 9 years, how long did it take you to sort of get over the military?
I don't think you ever get over the military.
Oh, really?
No. I think it stays with you. It actually, and then I went to work for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is almost an annex of the Navy. Most of the folks that serve in there came out of Rick Over's program, Admiral Rick Over's program. So it's the military training stays with you. It's good. I mean, in some respects, it's very good because you have that discipline. And the drive that you get from the service if you're successful, and it helps you be successful in your civilian career.
Rear Admiral Hart has never gotten over the military, right? And when you're there 33 years active duty, it's just part of you, right? I mean, I can see the way you walk. He walks in sort of a very sort of military way, body straight, and right?
Yeah, it just becomes part of your life.
Well, it's tough on your family life too, isn't it? I mean, it's so many people. It's just difficult on the family, on the children.
It is. It's difficult, and the Navy, as the other services, go to great lengths to try to incorporate the families into what's going on. And I watched it over 33 years become better and better. Today, it's probably as good as it's ever been in taking care of families and having those links that they need to health or social help, whatever that might be, is available for them.
Well, there are a lot of criticism of President Trump, and some that's very justified, but I think everyone feels that he has the heart of the military, that he's there for them. I think there's a great feeling for that, and we're lucky for that. We'll be back. This is Celebrating America.
Excuse me.
We can anything that's really pressing that you want to bring up. Anything that you want to bring up that's pressing you think about? Yeah.
Well,
what's President Trump now is going, and he's in in Europe. He's meeting with Putin. He's meeting with Merkel.
The 20, yeah.
With the 20,
yeah.
G20. Let's talk a little bit about that, and what are our expectations?
He's also, by the way, interesting thing, he's taking, not a side trip, but he's going to meet with that group. It's a very strange group because it's a group that's primarily focused on the Baltic,
yes,
the Aegean, and there's one other sea, the Black Sea. So you have countries from the three areas that are about as diverse and as far apart as you can get.
And he was in Warsaw too. I mean,
yeah. Well, that's part of it.
That's giving a speech.
And he's really being apparently very well welcomed in Warsaw by the Poles. They're going all out to celebrate.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I'm just going to read a quick poem on America that I wrote, if you don't mind. No one ever listens to my poetry, so I have to have some.
Take the opportunity while you can.
Captive audience.
Yeah.
Why not?
15 minutes of fame.
It's really 15. I used to do poet attempts, and I'm more background, so I was a better poet than almost everyone. And so in the poet tent, they vote, and so I was only in the top 3. But I always lost out to someone who would end by saying, "And I see my psychiatrist every night." And she'd win. Or, "And I'm gay and I'm happy," and he'd win. And I go, "Oh my goodness, this is about poetry, isn't it?" But they always won. So one of those times, I combined it. I said both those things. I still didn't win. I don't believe it.
All right, so
You know,
that wasn't the case. It was really you.
Yeah, it was me. But I loved doing that. And they loved having, because I was the only white old guy there in the whole room. Everyone else was younger.
Now, do you have a style? Do you do free verse or?
Yeah, I can do everything. No, I've been writing poetry. I write from 23 on. I wrote 12 poems a year for like 30 years. So I got a lot of poems. I disciplined myself, and I wrote in different styles because I have masters in English. So I learned all that stuff. But I like free verse more because you can get ideas.
Yeah,
it's easier.
Flows better.
It's more difficult when you're couplets or something like that. It's difficult to get the ideas out. The best poets can do both, you know. And I'm not Keats, so. What amazed me, because I was with a lot of poets, is the best poets never had
This
the
is the
discipline.
last spot.
To
Short
do anything.
rejoin is next.
And they were so
Stand by.
talented, but they rather drink and fool around, and the poetry was a means of attracting women or men.
You are listening to Mayor of the Airwaves.
Hey, it's Stanford Erickson. I'm here with what we call the Facile Fossils, and we just had 4th of July, and a poem I wrote once on America. America is more than a place. America is a way of being. America is more than a people. It is a world of people. America is more bountiful than the wheat fields of North Dakota, its shores more shiny than the waves that break on Malibu. America is a Nigerian who walks 12 miles to a cinder block school. America is that Indonesia Chinese who worships Buddha, risking poverty in his life with his Muslim neighbors. America is the Afghan woman who throws off her burqa and strides to college in a blouse, a skirt, and an attitude. I'm an American, says the Mexican who works 2 jobs after grade school to help his parents. I'm an American, says the priest who takes on the church to protect the young children. I'm an America, says the factory owner who pays his employees before taking $1 for himself. I'm an American, says the politician who votes what's right and loses an election. When there's a choice between saving a rare book or a child in a raging fire, an American saves both. God bless America, the hope for the world, still a reality in America. We're here with 3 heroes who've dedicated their lives to helping others so that you and I can live. And we're talking about world affairs, and right now we have our president. He's over in Europe, the G20, and he's working for us, hopefully. Richard Kerr, what do you think of what's going to happen? How are people reacting to him? What is it good that he's over there?
Oh yeah, I think it's very good. I think the reactions to him are very mixed. Everything from Merkel, who is not very happy with Trump and his policies,
Chancellor of Germany,
Germany, and he's going to see the Yeltsin, or not Yeltsin.
That's your time.
That's my time. Yeah,
Mr. Putin.
He's going to see Mr. Putin and have a discussion. He's going to have an opportunity, I don't know, to talk to the Chinese as well. I believe.
I think he talked to him the
Xi,
night before. Yes,
President Xi. So he's going to have an opportunity to talk about a lot of kind of key issues that are bubbling right now. Now, I don't expect any resolution to these. This is not where you resolve problems, but it is where you lay out policies and ideas and get reactions to them. So it's an opportunity for him and for others to express their views and to have a little kind of quiet but private debate.
Alan, this is, you and I play golf at times, so this is not a president that you sort of, you respect him as a president, but you might disagree with him. Is that not so?
That's a fair characterization. But at the same time, even though I'm not crazy about this particular occupant of the White House, we all want him to be successful. I mean, it's our country. And so I think we all hope that what he's doing over there is going to be of benefit to the United States and to the world.
I would say, Alan, I'm not sure we all want him to be successful. I think there's a good number of people who want him to fail.
Well, then they're
there were
suicidal.
people who wanted Obama to fail.
They're suicidal then. If you want your president to be a failure, then you're suicidal.
No, that's a good point, though.
Rear Admiral Hart, the world is teetering with the problems in Syria, teetering in the problems of Korea, and Chancellor Merkel is concerned about climate change, right? I think we're all concerned about climate change, but I don't see that on the same level of what's happening right now. Or am I wrong on that?
Well, I mean, the security issues between what's going on in Syria and Iraq, with the Iranian influence that takes place there, the fact that you've got Russia meddling in all of these things, there's great unrest there, and I think that's a higher priority than climate control and that kind of thing. But I do think that global warming is an issue that's got to be addressed as well. But I think it has to be addressed in a smart, scientific way. I'm not sure what we had before the Paris Accords was necessarily the right answer for what we need to do. We do obviously need to continue to work on that, but I would go back to the security issues that we're dealing with today are probably the most important thing we need to try to get right.
You know, Merkel gave a speech, and she basically said, we in Europe have to sort of protect ourselves. Well, that would be nice. We wish they would protect themselves. They're not even contributing the 2% that they agreed to give money to their own defense. So it's more of a political statement, isn't it? Isn't it, Alan? It just seems like politicians are playing politicians rather than there's something more important than that taking place, but that they're not dealing with it that way. Or am I wrong?
I'm not sure where you're trying to get at. I think it's in our interest. Personally, I think it's in our interest to ensure that Europe is secure. I think that was part of the reason for NATO and others is we don't want to hold a war on our own territory. The next war will be fought probably in another part of the world, not in the United States. And it's our interest to keep that part of the world secure, as if nothing else, a buffer zone, so that we don't have to fight a war on our own ground.
But Richard, I don't see President Trump not saying that he would not support Europe. In fact, he's in Warsaw right now.
Yeah, he's been a little hesitant about his embracing NATO, and in part because he's torn between a couple different objectives. One is he wants them to pay their share, and he thinks we've taken an unnecessarily large burden of that, which we have. And we did it for a reason. We did it for a very specific reason. And a lot of it was self-interest. So we weren't just protecting Europe because of Europe. We were protecting Europe for our own.
And that was my point.
As Alan was saying, for our own self-interest. And we don't, the Europeans are kind of a mixed bag of people who can't get along with each other despite the EU attempts to do it. They're having a very difficult time kind of looking at what was said earlier about priorities. I would say Merkel's priority probably should be looking at her own internal problem of population and trying to manage that. Probably would be high on the list if you were a German leader, a chancellor. Because
well, she wants to get elected again too, right?
That was my point to you, Stan, is that some of what she's saying is based on the backdrop that she's got to run for re-election. So distancing herself from Trump, if that favors and helps her get elected, I can see that happening. And we'll see down the road after the elections are over where Germany really stands and goes. But they do need to pay their fair share in NATO, and that's something I think the president was right to call them on. Seems like in the past we haven't been quite forthright in demanding what we all signed up to.
One thing that Trump has not committed to, and that is the fundamental concept that in NATO, an attack on one is an attack on all. He's been unwilling really to say that and commit himself to that.
Well,
that's what bothers.
His spokespeople have said that.
But
he's contradicted them a number of times.
He's avoided it, though, I think, and that. I don't know why. I don't know whether that's something he doesn't believe in, or that's just something he doesn't want to commit the administration to without some further.
Well, I get so excited on this. I don't look. Sorry. I get so interested in this.
Cut mid-sentence, right?
You should take your clock.
I know they should
Put
put
it
the
up
where you
clock on
can
the
see
wall.
it.
Yeah.
Where you
But he
can
can't
look straight at it when you're talking.
Can't over here.
Yeah.
He has to.
Yeah,
He has to be able to see it?
He,
Okay.
he has to.
So you can't afford 2 clocks?
Well,
I think they could, but actually,
Just
Rhett would
wondering.
say no, we can't.
Oh,
we
okay.
can't. We can't afford.
okay, we got about 5 minutes here. You can get up and walk around. In terms of the, would you talk a little bit about the, on the carrier, the green room, and why you have the green room? I mean, that's so
You're
fun.
talking about the greenie board.
The green board.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's easier to do in a setting where I can project.
I know, but people,
But-
there is how competitive it is.
Oh, all right.
You know,
I'll talk about it.
and that makes the skill, how you have to be skillful in what you're doing.
Right. It all goes back to safety.
Yeah.
And the more competitive you make people to be safe, the
Yeah.
better passes
Now,
they fly, the better.
After you do
better
that,
off.
then I'll go back to the nuclear in terms of safety. In terms
Okay.
of, that's what you did. In terms
I wasn't just security. I was a senior resident inspector at a nuclear
Yes.
power plant. I'm a nuclear engineer,
Yeah,
so
well,
part of my
but
work
when-
was,
then you explain that that's what we do.
and they made a nuclear engineer chief of security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the need for safety.
That sounds sensible.
Oh, yeah.
And how,
Well, the Navy does this too, and this is senior executives are assumed to be able to manage anything, and so all of a sudden, one day you're a nuclear engineer, and the next day you're in charge of security.
That may not be true, but
the way it works in a lot of
It
ways.
worked. It worked.
but the military does a good job of training people to do that.
Well, you have people under you.
Right.
Before you take that on, you
Yeah.
have people under you that are very good.
One of the things that I thought and was a lack that CIA never trained staff officers.
Hmm.
As a result, they were terrible staff officers,
Hmm.
and that's a problem in a big
Yeah.
organization where you have people that are not trained to do that. Now, I was a staff officer. I hated it. I mean, I just didn't like it.
Did the CIA not participate in the Federal Executive Institute?
They sent a few people, but I tell you, sitting around a room one time with Bob Gates and a group of senior executives, CIA, they were talking about training, and I said, wait a minute. Any of you people ever had any training? Ever gone to anything?
Mhm.
Hell no, we're not going to leave our jobs and go off and go to training. We've got things to do,
We're
important
too
things.
important.
We got things to do.
Yeah,
None of them have
We're
been
too
in
important
training.
to take a day
after we
off.
go there.
Okay.
And the military won't allow that.
But
Yeah. No, you
Military
you
sends you
will
to
be
train.
trained.
yeah, but go, after that, go into that. But then I'll talk a journalist. There's no training either. I was-
It's all on
I mean,
the job for you.
You just get promoted,
Yeah.
and now you're in charge.
It's not that there's no training. There's required things along the way, but it's not a systematic
Well,
training
yeah.
program that the military has
Yeah.
that puts you through a variety of different things. And that's both a good, because it doesn't take people out of the line, and it's bad because you don't have the broad enough sometimes experience that you need.
Yeah. Later on, then I'd also like to get into Paul's, because I think he listens to us. Paul's article in terms of the media,
Yeah,
and
anything about it.
and then I'll mention.
I don't know anything about
I
that.
haven't read it either. So.
What he's just saying in the media, he's saying that CNN and New York Times apologized for the
Yeah.
problems, and they amazing that at that high level they have those kinds of problems.
that they got there.
Yeah, but that there's need for correction. The media has to correct itself, and we are so, as journalists, we are so loath to admit error. I mean, it is amazing. I don't know how many times we made a mistake, and the journalists, several would come to me and say, look, at these people have always complained about us. It's the first error we've ever made. We didn't make any error. Now they're going to say all the other things we did was wrong. So we can't admit that we made a mistake. And I would say, we made an error, we made the change, we put it in there. And they would hate
See, that
me.
was the problem with 3 Mile Island. The utility refused to admit that they made a mistake to the public, and they just kept trying to blow the public off.
Okay, then let's bring that up then. Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
pointed that
Well,
out.
no one likes to
That's,
admit
you know,
mistakes.
Yeah, but
That's why
that's what you do. I mean, I had no problem in that because
Well, that's how these things get going. I mean, you know, it's not, what do they say? It's not, you don't go to jail for the actions you did, it's for the cover-up.
cover-up.
that
Yeah,
comes
it's always-
afterwards.
it's always the
you
case.
keep trying to make excuses for
Yeah,
yourself, and it's not going to work.
I mean, look at,
absolutely. Okay. I'm going to go in terms of the what you call it, the green
well, it's called a greenie board. It's
greening board. Greening board.
Yeah, it's
No, I remember it very well.
You know, the other side of this too is error, and that is the government doesn't fire people for making mistakes. Military does. I mean,
The government
when you-
does fire people for making mistakes.
Well, not many, but
It's difficult.
not
It-
many.
yeah.
But I mean, a naval officer can be fired for running a ship aground. Or
Oh, yeah, he's
well,
gone.
I mean,
This
Well, he's not
destroyer-
necessarily gone, but his career's over with.
Yeah.
Yeah, career's over.
But quite often, you know, that doesn't happen in other parts of government.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the civil service are very protected with the.
Well, but even non-
if not getting rid, I'm sorry, I was a manager, senior manager, supervisor in the government, and it's a lazy supervisor who doesn't get rid of poor performers.
it's hard though.
There's
It's
work.
documentation.
There's work. It's
You
the
really-
documentation you have
yeah.
to go through.
Well, today, it's the same thing. It takes about a year in journalism. If you have to give first notice, you have to put something in writing, then 3 months later, you meet with them again, you see where they are, you have to give them 3 notices.
Yeah.
It takes about a year to fire someone in
Now,
journalism.
CIA had a pretty good arrangement, but it didn't use it well enough, and that is you serve at the discretion of the director. So anybody can be fired without cause. I mean, without cause. He can say you're fired, period. Now, if you do that kind of recklessly, you're going to end up with a suit somewhere, and then you'll end up paying some money. But it's still a good idea to be able to have that authority. Military can do it by other means.
I did it in the NRC. I fired a couple of guys. It takes a while to get it done, but you can get it done.
Yeah, it's
And if there's, for example, the individual that helped me meet my wife got fired for sexual transgressions, and he got fired immediately. There was no staying for him.
It was much more difficult. Ben Bradley was married and sleeping with his reporter, and he didn't get fired. She didn't get fired.
Yeah.
well. I mean, we've got pretty good examples of them.
Yeah. So in journalism, it depends.
But it depends upon your
Stand
level
by in the
in the
studio.
organization
Open
too.
us up.
Okay. I'm going to go to you in terms of preparing people and the skill set and the greening and all that. If you talk on that,
just say carrier landings.
carrier land.
I'll take it from there.
Okay.
The only one I've ever done is in the cod. Isn't that what it is
Yep.
called? That was scary enough.
Hey, it's Stanford Erickson and Rear Admiral James Hart. Carrier landings. That's sort of frightening at times. How do you prepare people for that and keep them safe?
Okay, well, every squadron in the Navy, before it goes to sea, has to go through what we call field carrier landing practice. So we'll go out in the day and the night to an airfield, and we'll practice landing on a box that's lit just like the carrier deck. and there are landing signal officers there that grade and look at every single pass and make sure that the pilots are ready to go to sea and that they're safe to go.
Can they flunk out of that?
They can. Once you're already to a fleet squadron, that's a very rare occurrence because you've already carrier qualified in what we call a training command on probably 3 different kinds of airplanes. So by the time you get there, you're there. So when we're at sea, when we first go out to sea, the first thing we'll do is we'll carrier qual everybody. So all the pilots in the air wing will get day landings followed by night landings. Now, all of these landings are graded by landing signals officers called LSOs. And each squadron in their ready room has what they call a greenie board. So every pass...
A greening board.
A greenie board. So what you want is to get an okay pass, okay? So your landing is graded as an okay. And that means you're going to get a green. That box for your landing will be colored in green with your score on the bottom. 4.0 is the best you can get, and it goes down to 1.0 and so forth. So you'll have a board with every pilot's name and all of his last landings throughout that entire at sea period. So we grade them. We look at, everybody knows exactly what their average is, and this competitive nature of this makes it safer because guys strive to fly the very best pass they can.
Well, when you're going to land there, you have certain wires that catch the plane, right? So where's the best place to land?
Well, normally you want to catch the 3-wire. The 1 wire is closest to the stern of the ship, the end of the ship. So there's the 1, 2, 3, and the 4. The landing signal officers, along with the visual landing system we have, can target a particular wire, because once you get 100 landings on a wire, you have to replace the wire. So if that happens in the middle of a landing cycle, they'll go out and strip the wire and they'll target the 2 of the 4 or whatever until all the planes are back on deck.
Alan Madison, you were not only at nuclear submarines, but you were in the regulatory authority dealing with nuclear energy, and you were overseeing training and security and safety. How does that program work?
There's multiple areas that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission works in. If you're talking about strictly about the nuclear power plants, the program started up just prior to 3 Mile Island incident, was called a resident inspector program. Every nuclear power plant in the country was assigned a senior resident inspector and a resident inspector. So a senior engineer or junior engineer at the site to oversee the operation of the site, inspect the site, and at the same time manage a total inspection program that brought in other inspectors in various areas. So you get that oversight of the nuclear power plant right at the site, and then you have your regional office that provides the backup type inspections or the more broader inspections for say radiation safety or security inspection, and then you have the headquarters office that provides the programmatic concepts.
Now, when you show up, would they know that you're going to show up, so they clean up everything?
As a senior resident inspector, I was there every day, so they knew I was going to be there. Yeah. At times I did some back shifts. I showed up at 5 o'clock in the morning once at a nuclear power plant and found the security officers asleep. So no, sometimes they don't know I'm coming, and you can find things. But by being there every day, the idea about being there every day is it's impossible to hide things because you're there, you're seeing it, you're in the plant.
What is the security now with, especially with cyber warfare and things like this in terms of our nuclear plants?
Well, cyber warfare is not particularly an issue in a nuclear power plant. We're blessed with 60-year-old technology, so it's very difficult to hack something that doesn't have a computer connection to it.
I never thought of it. We're safe because we're bad.
It's a good, solid. Well, and I will say this: having run the program, the nuclear power plant is one of the most hardened commercial facilities in the world, an American nuclear power plant. just the basic structure itself, the containment structure provides a lot of protection. The nuclear security around it is also pretty robust, and it's tested now. And after 9/11, we made some major changes to various programs to make sure that it was beefed up more and tested more. So
3 Mile Island was not only bad because 3 Mile Island, but it also did a lot to just slow down development of nuclear power plants in this country, which is terrible.
That's not really true.
Oh, it's not true?
Nuclear power had begun to slow down prior to 3 Mile Island. There were plants being canceled, and it's primarily economics that caused that. Nuclear power plants are very expensive. At the time, you had public utility commissions that were very generous to utilities. Utilities were guaranteed a rate of return, it's about a 7% rate of return on their investment. And so they didn't care how much the plant cost because they were going to get 7% back. That changed after 3 Mile Island because the utility commissions got involved and started saying, well, you're wasting money and we're not going to pay you for wasted money. So that made a change too and made the nuclear power plants, again, less economical. It takes 5 to 10 years to build a nuclear power plant. In that time frame, your competitors can come in and build a gas-fired plant, a coal plant much faster and take away your customers. So nuclear power started shrinking right after, prior to 3 Mile Island, getting my dates mixed up.
Richard Kerr, in terms of training, we heard from Admiral Hart, the training, a lot of training in the CIA?
Have some good training for case officers and people going overseas in tradecraft. A lot of very careful training in terms of surveillance, counter surveillance.
How to drive a car?
How to get out of how to escape a terrorist attack in a car. Yes, a variety of different things. So that kind of training, I think, at the case officer level and the tradecraft level is excellent. Our training generally, in terms of training officers, is not as good as the military by any means. People just don't leave the line jobs. They many of them believe, and actually I believe to some degree, that working and doing the job was better training than going off to some training course. But I have some doubts about whether I was a terrible staff officer. I was put in a couple staff jobs, and I wasn't very good at it. In part because I never really learned anything about how to do it. I didn't like it, and I wasn't very comfortable doing it.
You're sort of a proactive type. Sitting at a desk is a little difficult, right?
That's right. I preferred to be doing the job that I thought was the job I was doing best, which was an analyst or managing analyst, and looking at product and presenting product, and also collecting intelligence.
The journalism's a lot like that. Most journalists want to be journalists, and they don't want to be managers, so they're not well trained. When we come back, our Paul Genesis, who generally is on here but is up in Connecticut right now, talks about the news media and their problems, and part of it is training. But this is Stanford Erickson. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Look at that, you did it right on time.
Did it on time.
perfect.
Learning.
It's a matter of training.
I'm going to talk on this, and then if you jump on the 3 Mile Island in terms of the cover-up.
Okay.
If you don't on that, but also in terms of the military is the best in terms of training people. It's just amazing because they train a person to wherever they are, as you say, they can take charge. The MBA was supposed to be like that too, but the MBA is sort of stupid because they take an MBA person and they put him, he has no background in energy, and they put him in charge of energy. Well, you can't be in charge of energy. Your training, it's all involved with war to some degree. But the MBA, I'm a manager, I can manage everything. You can't manage everything. It's silly. I can manage newspapers. I can manage magazines. I can't manage an automobile plant.
Yeah.
I have an MBA. I can't manage one.
Yeah, the government, I think, sort of gave up a little bit on that. The senior executive service, a lot of the that you could trade senior executives from one agency to another, and I think they found that that's not really true.
Yeah,
and they've stopped doing that. They used to do it a lot more, and I think they backed off from that program. Because you really do need to kind of stay within your silo of expertise.
yeah, there's no question.
Well, Harvard was the one that said we train them and they can manage anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the Harvard business MBA program mentality, and it's silly, you know.
Yeah, I tell you what saved my life was that I worked nearly every job there was in the agency. And when I got to the top, I knew when I got up to the top of the organization, I was hard to snow.
I kicked every can in journalism. I wasn't a student meteorite. Every can, same way.
There's
I
no
could
question.
smell what was wrong.
Now you can be a specialist or a generalist, and I was very much of a generalist, but you need both.
You need both. You need both. And sometimes the real genius IQs, you keep them in their little silo. You don't want them managing people.
Sometimes.
That's right. Non-stop commercial jet service has begun from Bureau Beach.
Yeah, we used to call our Office of Research the land of misfit toys.
Misfit toys.
You'd have these guys were geniuses, but they couldn't. Once you get them off their desk or outside their area, they couldn't even talk.
Yeah. No.
It's very true. We used to, when we become an admiral, they put you through do flag officers training, and it lasts about 3 weeks, and they give you a bunch of books that you're supposed to read, and one of them was called The First 90 Days, and it was a very good book. I read it. It was about, okay, you've been a supervisor. Now you enter into the executive level, your first level, and one of the book's premises was get out of your comfort zone. Yeah. If you're really good at this and you're not good at finance, go and spend time in finance and learn other things to broaden yourself so that you can be better successful.
That was a concept of the Federal Executive Institute to try to get folks trained to be executives instead of just walking into the job and having to take over.
Right.
I think
This is the last
some
spot.
people have an
Short rejoin is next.
Okay.
Healthcare provider for everyone. No one is turned down due to economic circumstances. Your generous support can help many in need. TCCH Inc. 772-257-8224. TCCHinc.org is a not-for-profit 501c. Donations are accepted.
This is Stanford Erickson sitting in for Rhett Palmer. And Paul Jenish generally is here with us too. He's in Connecticut right now. But he wrote a column in today's paper of the Press Journal called News Media's Big Errors Should Have Been Prevented. And basically, CNN had 3 top flight journalists, one having gotten a Pulitzer Prize from the New York Times, and they did a one-source story. In journalism, you don't do a one source, that one person saying something. You usually have to have a 2 to 3 source story, and it was an anonymous source, and it was wrong. And they did it because it was a breaking story and something terrible about Trump, and it was wrong. And the New York Times generally was corrected because they tied Sarah Palin to the killing, the shooting of Congresswoman Gifford, and they were wrong too. And Paul says the media has to apologize, has to come up with its errors. And I was a journalist for 40 years, and I know it was just so difficult to get any journalist to agree when they were wrong. When I would put a correction in the paper, they would sort of hate me for about 3 days. They would complain. They'd say, it's a minor error. And I just felt you had to do that. But I was trained. as a reporter. I used to write these beautiful quotes. And everybody said, oh, what dramatic quotes you have. So one editor came up to me and said, did they really say that? I said, well, that was their intent. He said, no. We're in the business of quoting them what they say. And he hit me on the shoulder. You could do that in those days. He hit me on the shoulder and he says, just quote what they say, don't make it pretty. But I was trained by editors that took me over like that. Now, you became the admiral, and you're being trained, right? You prepared for being admiral. How do they train you to get there? Were you prepared for that job?
Well, you get selected based on what you've done in your career and what they think your potential is.
Mm-hmm.
So that all plays into it. In the Navy, they have what they call a new flag officer training. It runs for about 3 or 4 weeks, and it takes you through a lot of different things. And what was interesting to me is one of the first things the Chief of Naval Operations said to us. We were in an auditorium, all these new flag officers, and he said, look down at your devices. You either have wings, or you have submarine dolphins, or you have surface warfare emblems. And he said, you need to take those off. You're now in charge of the Navy. You're now the leadership of the Navy. You need to stop thinking about your communities, whether it's submarines, airplanes, whatever, and think about the Navy in general. So that's a kind of reinforcement, the kind of training you get as you go along. And we picked up things like that through advanced business schools they'll actually send us to for like a week or two to learn some things about being an executive. We understand the military side of it and how to fight. It's the other side, how to run a huge organization like the Navy. It has a budget and it has to be run properly. So you have to spend time to make sure your executives understand that.
Well, Richard, you were saying that you're not that well. The CIA did not train the upper staff people. Train from a journalist point of view, I don't remember the CIA ever apologizing for making a mistake either, right? I mean, did they ever come up and say, "Gee, we were wrong in this," or?
No, I'm not. We did internally, obviously.
Yes.
We did a lot of internal look at what we did, how well we did it. But we really didn't, we were never in the PR business of saying, trying to correct the record, except as it transpired, as part of the normal course of things. I was involved in a number of times when I did postmortems on major things, the '73 war with between Israel and the Arab nations. The first Gulf War, I did a postmortem on, and I did the postmortem on the second Gulf War, Iraq, and nuclear and weapons of mass destruction.
Did you determine at that point that we probably should not have gone into Iraq, or what was
what we were doing is looking at the intelligence, all the intelligence provided to policymakers in the year and a half, 2 years prior to the war. And the conclusion was that, first of all, some sloppy analysis, a lot of analysis based on old information that was carried forward without looking at it, a lot of assumptions made about the value of the intelligence from the earlier days, just a lot of sloppy work and poor management of the analyst. It was a story that was not well received this was asked for by the Secretary of Defense and the head of CIA, and the report was given to them, and part of it was never really made public, although we wrote it unclassified, and it's been published in a couple documents. But it was a very severe criticism of both defense and intelligence, defense use of intelligence and the intelligence itself.
Is Congress has oversight of you? Does that work? Does the oversight by Congress work?
I'd say generally it does, or it has. Sometimes there's two. It ends up with a kind of a protagonist approach as opposed to a group where you can get positive results. So it ends up being kind of finding staff on the oversight committees wanting to make a point and wanting to publicize that. But I think generally the oversight process has worked pretty well.
Well, remember Senator Feinstein took on the CIA because they said that they sort of...
and she probably should have.
Yes, because she felt that they had infiltrated her office to anticipate what she was upset with. Or maybe I misunderstood.
No, I never was quite sure of exactly what happened, but pretty clear that that there was a conflict between the staffs, and the agency went a little too far in trying to figure out what the staff was doing. A little too much intelligence aimed at the staff rather than their own business.
Senator Graham wondered if his phones were being tapped as well. Remember, he asked that question as well. This is Stanford Erickson. We'll come back with the fossils in just a few seconds. Then we'll go into oversight of your agency by the Congress, okay?
Sorry, the clock didn't start.
Not at all. And we'll have fun because you took them on a little bit. That doesn't work either. Since they're paying the bills, right?
Well, his story, we found out why Senator Reid got so involved in nuclear power is because he basically ran on a balanced budget, and once they balanced the budget, he didn't have anything else to run on. So he found out his staff aide told him he had nuclear power in his area, so run on that. So he did.
Yeah. Who was the congressman? My memory is failing. Congressman from Indiana, well known.
Birchbriar?
No, another congressman. Was there for years and years. Headed my oversight committee. I'm trying to think of his name.
Who'd been speaker? Became speaker?
No. Anyway, he was by far the best oversight chairman. I used to testify all the time before them.
I know who you mean. It'll come. Yeah.
Delightful guy.
Yeah. Very. Yeah.
Anyway, it depended very much on who was the chairman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I probably testified more than any other single person, because I was there longer. In jobs where you did testify.
We have just about a minute more, and then we have about 15 minutes before another break. And then a short break, and then again. Did you want to speak on regulatory authority or oversight by Congress?
No, not particularly.
Okay.
Just work in that honor flight thing when
I'll
you
get
can.
to, after that, we'll go to the honor flight.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do the honor flight. That's good. We had made the same mistake on the newspaper, and I was in Japan, and we made it again. I came back, and a major advertiser was going to pull out $4 million, and this is our error, like the third time, but they didn't like the PR gal, so they did it just to irritate her, and so she's going to pull out $4 million. So I come back, and I said it's the same error. So I go to Washington, the person, beautiful woman who wrote the story that everybody loved because she's a beautiful woman. And I said, this is the third time you did that. Why'd you do it? Well, I don't. And so I came back and I made the correction on the front page where we had the story. I had a byline strike all of Washington. No one would do their byline. The CE.
Tell me, what is that? What do you mean?
A byline.
They wouldn't do their bylines?
They wrote the story, but they wouldn't put the byline.
They didn't want their byline on.
So it didn't bother. The CEO of
So what?
Knight Ridder called me, and I said, look, I'm a journeyman journalist. We didn't get a byline for 7 years.
Yeah.
So they don't have a byline. They're doing the story. I don't have any problem with it. They have every right to pull their byline. I let them pull their byline. And then the publisher came to me and said, the CEO called you. I said, yeah, I told him this one. He said, really? You told him? I said, yeah, I told him that. And the word got back to Washington that I didn't have any problem with it. In 2 days, the bylines came back.
Yeah.
That's her name.
Yeah, well, and that's their business. Yeah,
you can't.
Bread and butter.
You want credit. You want credit for your
The
work.
CEO calls me. The publisher's really upset. I said, they do the story.
Cutting your own throat.
If they don't want a byline, it doesn't bother me at all. At Business Week, they took away our bylines. So there's no bylines.
Now, see, we in the agency, I oppose the idea of bylines. It's not your product.
I know.
It's the agency's product.
Well, that's.
And so I don't care whether you want your name on it or not. I never would allow it. I noticed they've started allowing
I think people need that to some degree. It's
I read some of your reports before I left. It had the analyst names. And
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, there's some advantage in that you can pick up the phone and talk to the analyst.
Yeah.
That has that advantage. But
in journalism, when Business Week did that, the publication changed because when they took away the bylines and they'd have trying to make it homogenized and everything, it lost all its personality.
well, I just
And
thought
it wasn't as interesting.
I just thought that it was not personal things that people were writing. It was you were writing for the
Yeah.
agency and it was no one read you because of your name. They read you because it had CIA written across the top of it. But we used to have a good debate about that on a regular basis.
Okay, I'm going to go to you in terms of the regulatory oversight, and then we'll go to the honor flights.
Okay, great.
And if you want to pipe in on the honor flight, I mean, it's a wonderful thing you're doing.
That's a great program.
Yeah.
How old do you have to be?
Well,
I'm 81, nearly 82. Could I do it?
yes, you could. We had a guy in the
Well,
last.
we should have him.
We had a guy in the last
No,
flight who was
just
97 years old. 97.
Yeah.
He and his son went. We've had a
One
guy.
more and then the open. One
Okay.
more.
Hurricane season has begun, and from now until November.
Okay, stand by. Open is next.
Start now by making a plan, packing a supply kit, and registering for a special needs or pet-friendly shelter if needed. Stay ahead of the storm by signing up to receive alerts at alertindianriver.com or download the Aware and Prepare app.
It's not a function of age that's involved anyway.
No, it's having served in as either World War II, Korea, or Vietnam veteran.
You did not.
I'm trying to get this guy.
Mhm.
He's a Korean war.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was there during the end of Korea, but I never got to Korea, thank God. Or was never sent.
We're talking about congressional oversight. Alan Madison, you were with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. What kind of oversight did Congress have on you?
Well, Congress always has oversight because they control the budget. The NRC is set up with 5 political appointees. They're the commissioners. The chairman of the commission is always based upon who the president is, whether Republican or Democrat. That'll generally be, for example, now the current chairman is a Republican. But you still, again, the president, it's an executive agency, so it's not directly tied to the Congress. It's tied directly to the president. However, because Congress still controls the budget, you have to speak to Congress. For example, after 9/11, I briefed a lot of Congress, individually and sometimes in groups, on what the security aspects of the nuclear power facilities, not just the nuclear power plants, but other facilities in the country was, and where we saw needs for improvement, so that they could get behind our requests for budget improvements, so that we could accomplish the task.
Was this, did they interrogate you, or was this a...
Oh, certainly, yeah, and particular one individual was very vicious in his lack of belief in that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had done its job, or that the nuclear industry was prepared for that type of effort. And at one point, my boss decided that I was becoming a lightning rod with this individual, and he'd take over from there. And that was okay with me. As it turned out, that individual, though, later on became the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and he was the first chairman who was ever fired. So I think I got my revenge eventually.
Rear Admiral James Hart does something very unusual. It's called the honor flight. Discuss that a little bit with us.
Okay. I'm a board member on the Space Coast Honor Flight, and we really take veterans from Brevard County and Indian River County to Washington to see their memorials, World War II, Korean, Vietnam, Arlington Cemetery, all those things. And I kind of wanted to share with you, on the 24th of June, we took 25 veterans and 25 guardians up to Washington, D.C. Congressman Posey was there at the World War II Memorial and met and shook hands with all the different veterans.
He does that a lot, right?
I think he makes every flight. And if he's here in Florida, he comes to our departure ceremony the morning that we go. Of the 25 veterans we took, 10 were World War II, 15 were Korean. The oldest veteran was 97. The youngest veteran was 82 years of age. And we also had 4 women with us, 3 that served in World War II and 1 in the Korean War. And so we went to the Women's Memorial that day. We always go there. And they were brought into their Hall of Fame, as it is up there in Washington. On the way home,
what time do they get there? Let's go through
well,
the day.
It's a long day. We start at 2 o'clock in the morning at the Melbourne Wickham Park Senior Center. We have a motorcycle escort with the combat vets, about probably 2 police officers and 25 to 30 motorcyclists go with the bus to the Orlando airport. We go to BWI. From there we go down into Washington, D.C.
And you arrive about what time?
We're normally in BWI probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. We get down into Washington. We do the Air Force Memorial. We do the other ones I mentioned, Women's Memorial, Vietnam Memorial, and then we go to Iwo Jima, and then back on the bus to the airport.
How do these guys walk? I mean,
well, we have wheelchairs for each veteran, and some of them are in very good physical condition and they have no problem, and others get tired during the day and they use the wheelchairs. When we got to the Orlando airport about 8:30 on Saturday night, as the veterans were coming off the aircraft, we come off last, there was a bagpiper there who piped them into the terminal and then led them up the terminal. And Southwest Airlines had told people throughout the entire terminal that we were coming. There was about 1,000 people in the terminal on both sides of the aisle just clapping and cheering and shaking hands with the veterans. And what was really amazing and really touched me, I'll never forget this, we got to the end of the terminal. Southwest Airlines made an announcement, talked about the honor flight, and then he asked the crowd to sing God Bless America with them. So here we are in the Orlando Southwest Terminal, and all these people are singing God Bless America on a Saturday night in June. It was just an amazing, amazing experience.
Now, how can, if people want to get involved in this, how can they do that?
Well, we have 100 to 150 volunteers besides the board. They just need to contact us, and we have a website. Just Google Space Coast Honor Flight, and all the material and information is there. Each person who goes, the veteran, is accompanied by someone, right? And they have to pay. Is that not so? Normally, the guardian will pay a $400 donation.
And they have the whole day, though. They get fed.
They get fed. They get an airline ticket. All of that's included. Veterans all go free. 98 cents of every dollar we get goes to the veterans. The other 2 pennies are for our administrators.
And people can donate to this, and it's
sure. We're a 503c charity. So yes, you can donate to it. And it's tax deductible. We're really almost out of World War II veterans. I have 2 or 3 guys left to call this year. So if there are any World War II veterans out there, I encourage you to apply. I also encourage Korean and Vietnam veterans to apply as well.
Well, I've met a couple of their children, and they said their father never spoke to them, World War II veterans, until he came back from flight. And then he for the first time, he opened up.
We've had a lot of experience like that. We even had a gentleman who had never told his family he was a POW in World War II until after the flight. And then he felt comfortable talking about it.
Yeah. Richard, you want to go on that flight? I mean, you
No, I think they're great, though. I mean, I think it's a wonderful project. I don't deserve to go on it. I'd send other people before I went.
Well, I was in Korea, but not. The only shooting that I had is I was going up to Panmunjom, and I was taking a AP reporter up with me, and we were driving. I was driving the Jeep, and all of a sudden we heard some shots, and we got under the vehicle. We didn't know where the shots were, or if they were at us or anything. And we waited for about 5 minutes, and nothing came up, so we got up and drove up, and I told the person I reported to what I did. You got under the vehicle? You know, they could shoot the vehicle, it could blow up. Oh, I never thought of that. So I'm not a very good veteran. Going back to President Trump now is in Europe. We're going to see some headlines. Richard, the world is on the edge to some degree. Next 5 years, what do you see?
I think it's going to be a boiling pot. We're going to have to deal with the North Koreans somehow. And that means China. We're going to have a increasing probably confrontation with China and North Korea. I think we're going to have a major confrontation with the Iranians in the Middle East as we begin to sort out what the Iranians are going to try to do after we kind of clear out ISIS and out of Iraq and Syria, which is going to happen. But behind them come the Iranians, Hezbollah, and a group of people who are determined.
And the Iranians have a relationship with North Korea too. So.
That's right, they do. Actually, they've been getting material going both directions. So the Iranians are going to be a continual problem for us. I mean, I think we need to be very tough-minded with them, and I think
Madison,
Trump will be.
is this President Obama created this agreement? It's one that you favor. Is that not so, or am I wrong?
With Iran?
Yes.
To anything to de-weaponize, or yeah, I agree with any program that helps de-weaponize the world. You know, to try to scale back the confrontation that we were having at the time with those folks. We got into an issue where we could have gone to war again with somebody that we don't need to fight.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those.
We've had. We
still have two more going.
Yeah. Too many of those.
We'll be back in a few moments. I'll ask Admiral Hart what he thinks the next 5 years is going to be.
Oh my God. But you should consider going. It's not about having been in combat or anything like that. One of the best stories I have.
Okay, when you get off now, I need some help cleaning up all the stuff. We have another live host at 11 o'clock.
Okay, sure do.
I'll take this from you now because
I
got one more thing left, and that's the news.
We have lots of guys that say, I don't need to go. I didn't do that much. Let other people go. But we took a guy who was a baker. Now his family, his father, his entire family were bakers. They came over from wherever, and so when he went into the army in World War II, they said
make him a baker.
They used good sound logic. They made him a baker.
It's unusual.
So
yeah, really.
So he's on this trip with us, and he was a little reluctant. I didn't do much. I was just a baker. Blah blah blah. Bob Dole is at the World War II Memorial. He walks up to Bob Dole and he says, "Sir, I baked bread for you when you were in the hospital." Bob Dole and he became the best of friends. It was like an instantaneous friendship. And when the poor gentleman passed away in Titusville or wherever, Bob Dole sent a personal letter to the family.
I was in Italy, and we went to the town where Bob Dole, they took care of him because he broke his legs and was in the hospital in the town. And they have a little memorial there, Bob Dole.
Yeah.
Little small Italian.
He has a lot to do behind the scenes and so forth with the World War II Memorial having been built, because it was the last one. I mean, we did Vietnam first, then Korea, and then we did World War II. So.
We'll be in a few minutes.
trying to get. I have an uncle that lives in Asheville.
3 more spots left.
Okay.
I'm trying to get him to come down here.
Well, I
Told him it's
should,
real easy now.
I should be go out with them. I don't think I should be a veteran, but I think go with one of them. You know, if Wally's going and his son can't go, I'll go with him too. I should, because I've never been to Arlington Cemetery, and I lived in Washington D.C. You know,
That's a
No,
very
it's really neat. Yeah.
It is.
It's a moving
Yeah, it
place.
is.
Unfortunately, I've been there for several internments. So.
Yeah.
well, every time I went there, the traffic was so bad that I turned around.
You wouldn't have to worry about that with us.
I know.
We have park police that are our escorts, and we just go right through the traffic.
You know DeMars? Is that someone you know? Admiral DeMars?
The name sounds familiar to me.
He was involved in the nuclear. We were together. We were doing something at the labs together years ago. I always thought he was one of the real impressive guys. Yeah, submariner, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, it was speaking of training, there was a lot of training went into the nuclear, anybody that served in the nuclear industry, or nuclear Navy. And Rickover demanded it. It was part of his focus on safety. He was focused on safety more than, I think, anybody
I
at the
read
time.
the book you told me to read. It's a spectacular book.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the last spot. The short rejoin is next.
You are listening to the Mayor of the Airwaves.
Hey, it's Stanford Erickson. We're just here for a few more minutes, but Admiral Hart, the next 5 years, what do you see?
Well, I think we have to be very careful over the next 5 years. I think there's a lot of risk. As we look around the globe, I think we need to seriously look at what the military needs. I know the military gets more money than any other department in the government, but unfortunately, the way we've been using the military, I believe we're going to have to continue to pay for that security. I think that President Trump has surrounded himself with some very good individuals. General McMaster, who's his national security advisor, General Mattis. I think those are very good choices and the right people to help him along with the rest of his team to steer through a very difficult times ahead.
Some of the media people who really like President Trump said those two gentlemen are sort of at odds with the president, they thought. And is that your feeling?
I don't know that they're at odds. I know I met Mattis. He used to visit me when I had a command out in Africa. These are very, very straight shooting guys. These are guys that will tell him exactly the correct aspect of it. No politics involved, and that's what I believe our leaders need.
Well, I think he can take it too. I remember President Obama, McChrystal, took issue with him, and he was gone. He was gone within 2 days.
Yeah.
And so I covered a lot of presidents, and I covered a lot of CEOs, and the best CEOs, for all the bluster and all the ego, know how to listen. And I think my gut feeling is President Trump does listen. I think that's not his, would like to listen, but I think he does listen. I think for all the kindness and consideration, President Obama lacked the management skill to listen to someone who disagreed with him. And the key to that was when he said, "This is the red line," and his entire staff said, "You must do something." And he walked around the White House and then came back and said, "I'm not going to do something." Now, Alan, you probably thought that was the correct decision.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Maybe you're trying to get conflict going
Okay,
on here.
sorry. Yeah. Well, I do that. That's-
I didn't agree with everything he did.
Okay.
Just not a surprise. I shouldn't hope it's not a surprise. And I don't necessarily disagree with everything that Trump is doing. I certainly hope that he's successful in what he accomplishes. I have my doubts.
Yeah.
And whether or not he will listen to the excellent people that he's got in certain areas, I don't know that.
Well, Alan's a good friend, so I do listen to Alan. It doesn't mean I always agree with him, but I do listen to him. And he's starting to listen to me. He says it only takes 2 aspirins after.
Actually, it's Advil.
This is the day after the 4th of July. We have 3 heroes here. We have Richard Kerr, the former Deputy Director of the CIA, Rear Admiral James Hart, who served 33 years in active duty, but 37 years with the government. We have Alan Madison, who was 7 years in very trying times at times. You once told me you had a nuclear sub that hit some rocks. And
we bounced off an undersea mountain.
Yes. And you didn't know if you're going to continue bouncing around anymore after that.
Multiple experiences. We blew a barn door off a torpedo tube, which puts a large hole in the center of the submarine. There's a lot of opportunity for failure out there.
Well, we saw that in
A lot of moving parts.
in the Japanese Sea with our destroyer, where 7 sailors lost their lives, so the program has been dedicated to some degree with those who have served, and sometimes we forget how people serve. In the CIA, I covered the CIA a lot, and they don't get credit for what they do. They don't. No one writes about them. They won't give you your name. They're not allowed to protect them, but they too are putting their life on the line. We hope that those who have served in Korea and Vietnam and World War II will go on the honor flight. One last story on the honor flight, if you would, in terms of Bob Dole and the baker.
Well, you talk about people not considering themselves heroes, and we hear that from a lot of veterans. And there, one particular was a veteran who went into the Army as a baker, and that's what he did in the Army. And we were up at the World War II Memorial. I wasn't there, but this gentleman went up to Bob Dole, who goes to the World War II Memorial most Saturdays, and said,
And he can't. He's in a wheelchair now, isn't he?
I think Bob Dole uses a wheelchair. Yeah, I haven't seen him lately, but anyway, this gentleman walked up to him and said, "Senator, when you were in the hospital recovering from your wounds, I made bread for you," and the two of them became the best of friends and stayed friends. And when this gentleman passed away, Bob Dole sent a personal letter to his family that meant that much to him to have gotten to know this veteran.
You know, when I was Stars and Stripes in Korea, I always ate at the Air Force base, Osan, because they had the best food. Because the Air Force brings in the food by plane. Second best is the Navy and the Army.
You've never been on a submarine, apparently.
Well, submarines, they eat well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this gentleman was the chef there, master chef, and I said, let me do a story because then I could eat there all the time. And he said, sure. And he had been the chef in the White House for General Eisenhower. I said, well, how did you lose that job and now you're working in Osan, Korea? He said, too much vanilla extract.
Funny.
So, interesting times. In terms of the Navy eating on the submarine, what you said, you got lobster?
We had king crab.
Oh, king crab.
In the freezer was a snack. Yeah, we walked on our food, but it was in crates, and we ate well. Problem you run into is like we go out in after about 4 or 5 days, you're out of regular milk, so it's powdered milk from then on. But they did try to take care of you by feeding you well while you're out at sea.
No rum? I mean, no.
No. Alcohol is generally frowned upon. Although we did have one commanding officer who felt that a glass of wine, if you weren't going on watch, was appropriate, and he brought it on for special occasions. Not necessarily Navy protocol.
Well, I remember reading about our back in the Revolutionary times, and there was rum for everyone.
Oh, there still is in the
rum.
Canadian Navy. They still get their tot of rum. They don't have to drink it, but they can save it up.
This is Stanford Erickson for the Rhett Palmer. He'll be back. He's on assignment, but he'll be back with you. It's a pleasure to be with you. We have Richard Kerr with us. We have Admiral James Hart with us. We have Alan Madison, three gentlemen who served their country and deserve a lot of respect. We're so fortunate to live in this country. Stanford Erickson signing off.
Good job.
Okay.
Yeah, very nice.
Well, I think it's
You're
a
clear.
appropriate time to, have you talk about that.
Yeah, were you trying to start a fight?
Always.
Little controversy.
Well, with Paul, I don't have to worry. He starts fighting
Good.
from the beginning.
Good job. Good job as usual, Mr. Kerr.
Yes, sir.
See you next
You
week.
enjoyed that, right?
You'll be
Yeah,
back
it
with
was
your
fun.
master.
Well, I don't know whether I'll be back or not. I have to wait till Stanford gives me instructions.
Well, you have to know what Rhett's say. Rhett
Rhett will be
Rhett
back.
is not organized, so you never know.
Yeah, well, you guys come in on Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Good luck with the honor thing. I really think that's a
Thanks.
Good, how are you?
See you later. No, I'm fine. Nice to meet you.
Good to talk to you.
Okay.
All right, Stanford.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Nice shirt. I love that.